Hello, happy Thanksgiving. And I hope you guys had a great one this week. It's been amazing and quiet at the same time. So we're going to do chapter 19 through 21 today. And I did read ahead this time. So I do know there's some interesting stories about Moses and the rock and the snakes coming up. This chapter 19 is all about purification again of the priests and what they're supposed to do. Some interesting stuff. I think Mark has a good take on it with the red heifer without blemish, so we're going to read that. How's it going, Mark?
It's going pretty okay.
No snake bites, no snakes,
No, no, my cats take care of the snakes. If there's any, we
which
get
is a
some
good thing.
every
I think
once in
it's
a while.
horrifying that they even come in the house. I
Well,
can't.
they don't. The cats find them
Bring them in.
outside and take them into the house.
That's even
Yeah,
worse.
yeah. Which on my cat channel, there's going to be all of December is actually snake month.
Oh no. Well, that'll go with chapter 20, I think.
I think
Um,
YouTube's blocking my cat channel even because it's too
oh,
violent.
it's too violent, cat violence.
Well, it's a nature channel, is what it is, But
Yeah.
it's okay if lions kill zebras, but my cats cannot kill mice, apparently. I don't know. That's the rule, I guess.
Did Lily ever come back?
No, I think she's gone.
Oh no.
Gone to I think she's gone. Something
Oh,
got her.
where? Huh?
The hunter was hunted.
Oh no. Well,
Probably a
maybe she just
dog.
found something
Could
else.
be a monkey. There's monkeys around my house now,
Yeah.
which I didn't know about until like a month ago. I'm seeing more monkeys. It could have been a monkey.
Oh no. The monkey ate the cat?
I don't know. I mean, something did, dog or a monk, a larger predator, right?
Yeah.
Um, she was a little too curious. She always went a little too far away
Oh. Well, maybe she'll come
and never
back.
came back. Well, I doubt it, but maybe you never know. It happened before. A cat was gone for a
Yeah.
year and came back, but
Maybe
this is a
she's
female
hunting.
cat. There's
She
really
could be
nowhere
on
for
the
her to go.
prowl. Maybe she just
No,
wants to go check stuff out and then come back. Like you get bored every now and then.
no, she
Oh.
liked it here.
All right.
But this chapter here, so I have some I learned some things about this passage we're gonna read.
Yeah.
Basically, these three chapters are it's the end of the first generation and the beginning of the next generation. So by the end of this, actually starting in chapter 20, there's a time jump of about 38 years, and there's no mention of it at all. and
How
and
do
this is
you get
always
her?
confused. Well, I will. Well, I'll
All
show
right.
you when we get there. But I've always been confused. It's because when you read this, you're like, well, what happened in that 40 years?
Mhm.
Like where was the 40 years? I missed it. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, because it's not there. But
Maybe
there
it
is a
must have been
time jump.
exciting.
No, I'll show you when we get there. So basically, chapter 19, this red heifer thing is a purification ritual for those who have been around the dead bodies, right?
Yeah.
And why are they telling us this now? Because the first generation that came out of Egypt were basically sentenced to die in the wilderness, right? Over the course of 40 years. So they all died. By the end of, by the end of this episode today, the entire first generation will be dead except for Moses.
Yeah, but there's a reason why they all died. It's because they
Yeah.
never conformed to God and his
Yeah,
ways.
they were rebellious. Yeah. So that's why that's what this passage is about. Chapter 19 is about the death of all those people, you know, over the
Yeah.
course of that 40 years. And that's why they have to do this purification ritual. And it's kind of a purifying for the next generation to be purified to continue on.
Yeah.
So anyway, it'll be make more sense when we get to chapter 20. But let's just read this thing here. You ready?
And there's also a lot
Okay.
of symbolism too to Christ. And interesting, we're
Yeah.
talking about the red heifer because they're always looking for the red heifer to begin.
I don't know what that's about. They don't need one. Who's
No, but
looking
it's
for it?
all
The Jews?
referring back. Isn't this like the first time it's mentioned about the red
It
heifer?
is. Well, no, heifers have been mentioned, but the red
Not
one,
the
that's
red,
the thing
yeah.
is the red one, it's like, what does that even mean? Is the actual cow, it's a baby cow, basically, a baby or a small, it's a young female cow who's never been used in
They're,
labor or had a baby or whatever. But it's is it really red, or is that just because of the blood and what happens to it afterwards, or is it, why is it red? Where do you get a red cow? Um,
well,
is it,
it's
or is it
not
just
like
brown?
red. It's more
We
of
don't need
like
a red
red
heifer
hair.
now. Why do we need one now? For
Are
what?
you talking about 2024 or are you talking about
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
2000
no, 20
BC?
is that's what you're talking about, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
2024, they're looking for one to
Why? For what?
because they think I forgot what the ritual was, but they had to be perfect, unblemished red heifer as a
Well, that's what it says here.
sacrifice. They're going to do the
Who
same thing what they're doing there as a sacrifice to God.
who
Like
who,
that was the
who
start
who's
of
they?
the Jewish people that want the third temple. This is part of their third temple sacrifice that they have to do.
Oh, because they killed Jesus.
Oh, they don't think so. But I
The
mean, what they
Torah
want
keepers killed
is to
Jesus.
bring about their Messiah, right? So they need
Wait,
to
didn't didn't the Messiah come already like 2,000 years
they
ago?
did, but they don't know that it was Jesus, right? They don't accept that.
Why don't they know? It's in their own scriptures. It's in the Torah.
It is, but I guess in their minds, from what I heard, is that it was supposed to bring about peace for them and like a heaven on earth, which hasn't happened yet. So that he couldn't be the Messiah because one, he in their minds, it got rid of all the ritualistic stuff that they had through the Mosaic law, and then it was through the Spirit. And then on top of that, it didn't restore Israel as they wanted it to be, to rule the earth, which is still what they're trying to do, rule the earth.
Aren't they doing that now?
Yeah, but their Messiah was going to put them on that pedestal to rule the earth. So they didn't
Wait,
realize that he was taking them in a spiritual way, not in a physical way.
what's this? So this is the book of Hebrews, uh, to the Hebrews. I think it's called to the Hebrews, really. Jesus entered through the greater and more perfect tabernacle. So, I mean, the tabernacle we're reading about now in the book of Numbers is not the greatest one, not
Yeah,
made with hands. That is to say, not of this creation. So there's another tabernacle in heaven, apparently, and not through the blood of goats and calves, but through his own blood. His own blood.
yeah.
He entered the holy places once for all in the temple in heaven, having obtained eternal redemption. So he entered the holy places once for all. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling those who have been defiled, sanctify for the cleansing of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works
You
to
should
serve the living God?
highlight without blemish because this whole verse 14 goes back to Numbers that we're about to read.
Well, that's why we're reading it right here. It says right here, ashes of a heifer. That's why I've got the red light.
Yes, but in the Numbers time frame, it was a
Oh,
foreshadow of Christ to be without blemish, the red meaning
yeah.
blood of Christ. So that's why they had to be a red heifer.
Wow. Amazing. For
Yeah.
this reason, he's a mediator of a new covenant, so that since a death has taken place for the redemption of the trespasses that were committed under the first covenant.
Yeah.
So there, wait a minute, there's a first covenant and there's a new covenant. That's too many covenants. What's wrong with the
They
first
got
covenant?
invented. The first
Besi-
one went away.
Besides the fact that all of the people who received the Torah on Mount Sinai, only two of them entered the promised land, and thousands of them died in the wilderness.
I
So
don't
those
even
were the
think
original Hebrew
Moses
roots.
did. Moses
No,
enter
we're
the promised land? I don't
no,
think he did.
no. I think today we're going to see Moses rebel as well in a pretty big
Okay.
way. So let's get anyway. Those who have been called may receive the promise of the Oh, wait, there's an eternal inheritance. See, these
Yeah,
guys were reading about in Numbers are trying to enter that strip of land.
they're entering the physical land where we're entering the spiritual land promised.
Whoa,
So,
this is intense. Well, this whole thing is we could go on, but we better go back to Numbers
yeah.
here. So
I mean, what
anyway,
we're learning in the Old Testament is all the physical manifestation of what's to come in the spiritual world. He's just demonstrating every little thing to them. Like they weren't just gonna, if they were given, like, say, a spiritual promise to the promised land, they had to learn physically what all this was doing and if they were gonna stay faithful or not. And they weren't. So all of this is really a physical video, I guess. I don't know, like a demonstration.
typology,
Yeah.
foreshadowing, prophecy, even, prophecy. It's the law
Prophecy.
and the
Yeah.
prophets have been fulfilled, not just the law and the prophets. The whole Old Testament is prophecy, really.
Right. But when we're talking, let's say for one example, blood of Christ. Okay, we know the foreshadow what happened with the crucifixion and his blood being shed for all of us. But in the Old Testament, he made them see it through the blood sacrifices of all the animals. I mean, I think it was a lot of blood to be able to do this day in, day out for all their sins that kept on multiplying. They never decreased. It's not like, oh, well, you could stop sacrificing because you got so good. No, it just kept multiplying. And so by that time, I think they probably would have seen so much blood being shed from all
Yeah,
these.
because the cross really doesn't even make sense until you understand the sacrifice, the background of
Yeah,
this sacrifices, which is why I'd never understood Jesus for a long time, because I was like, okay, I believe in God, but I don't understand why I need Jesus, and I don't want to go to church with all these weird people, you know.
yeah,
So there's a kind of stage that people don't really recognize. There is that stage that people have, where you believe in God, but you're not quite sure, is it the God of the Bible? Is the Bible true? You know what I mean? So I mean,
yeah,
most people believe in something, that's why there's all these different religions and whatnot and the New Agers. And so people need to kind of believe in something or they're idolaters or whatever. We all worship something, right? So why, so it takes a while for some people to start reading the Bible, understand it, and believe it. It takes people, because they don't want
sure.
us to believe the Bible. That's the one thing they don't want us to believe in modern day culture. They do
Yeah,
not want us to believe this Bible.
yeah, and it's because it exposes the truth about reality that they're in and they're not accepting. The reality is that there is so much sin. Everybody's participating, even when you're not trying to. Somebody else is doing it to you, or you're doing it to somebody else. And that if we actually had to carry this ritual forward, I mean, there would be no life left. So when God came, he intervened on our behalf and he ultimately became the sacrifice. So they started with animals, but ultimately they sacrificed God. So, and he had to shed blood to atone for all this bloodshedding that's been going on since beginning of time. So I think if people really understood the history of what's happening, like, yes, this is a book about spiritual things, but at the same time, God is letting us know why and what and where and how long and why you even need Jesus. And I think people who are genuinely searching for God, they could get there. We did, so they can too.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's pretty nobody would have thought that most people probably thought that I would have died young, but
Yeah. Well, God saves
anyway.
and he gives everybody a purpose, whether they like it or not.
All right, let's start
But
with
yeah.
that introduction. All right, so then Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the well, hold on a minute. Let's just see. Remember what happened. Um, okay, there was kind of some stuff about the Levites. This is the statute of the law which Yahweh has commanded, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel that they take to you a red heifer without blemish, in which is no defect, and on which a yoke has never been placed." All right, like a young cow, right,
Yeah, but that is
without
the
blemish.
typology we just read about Christ.
Yeah, exactly. I probably normally we'd read that like at the end, but we started with that, so
Yeah.
which is good. I think it's fine to do
Well, I
that.
think the explanation was good to know that before reading this because it probably wouldn't have made much
Yeah.
sense.
Well, in this too, this chapter, it kind of explains it like later on. It starts out, you're quite not quite sure what this is all about. And then it kind of, I think by the end of the episode, we'll understand this better
All right.
um, in context here. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest. Oh, okay. Now here's a sign. Now notice Aaron's the priest, right? He's speaking to
Yeah.
Moses and Aaron. Aaron is still alive. He's going to die today, by the way.
Mhm.
Spoiler alert. And Miriam is going to
Yeah.
die, right? So entire first generation is going to die in this episode actually today. So except Moses. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest. So now see why are they talking about this? It's because it's because this is the transition, right? They're getting ready for the next generation to continue to enter the promised land because Aaron's about to die. So they're
Yeah.
just, they didn't really talk too much about Eleazar so far, but now Eleazar is the priest, right?
Hmm.
And in fact, today he's going to become the official high priest eventually, pretty soon. And it shall be brought outside the camp and be slaughtered in his presence. And I think there was some, was it the sin offering in Leviticus where they
Yeah.
do sacrifice something outside the camp? And there's
Yeah.
some
Every
things that
time.
yeah.
Yeah. So every time they go outside the camp to do the sacrifice, it's always a sin offering. And I think
Oh,
it's also maybe
atonement.
it's related to the area that they go and do this. I forgot what it was, but even that's a connection to the crucifixion later on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was crucified outside the
Yeah.
camp,
So
essentially.
so inside the camp, at least from the memory of what all of that was about, was protected and made holy, especially holies of holies inside, all of that. But then outside the camp is considered the world simple, and that's where they did all the sin offering.
Yeah, and actually in this one too, the person who kills this animal becomes unclean, which is unusual, which we're going to read about. Next, Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger and sprinkle some of its blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. And the blood is kind of a cleansing agent. The life is in the blood. Then the heifer shall be burned in his sight, the entire thing, its hide and its flesh and its blood, with its refuse shall be burned. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet material and cast it into the midst of the burning heifer. Okay, so this is kind of like a potion, right?
Yeah.
It's like a magic potion, which actually, you know what? This is kind of similar to the Nazarites, where they were, defiled if they touched a dead
Yeah.
body. They had to be, and then also that pregnant lady thing. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Just to test if a woman had cheated on her husband or something like that. They had
Right.
this kind of magic potion kind of thing.
Right.
So it's kind of similar. It kind of relates now. Those two things kind of make sense a bit more now.
And
So
also
they're
in
good.
Exodus, they were doing a lot of that with the hyssop, and remember they were sprinkling stuff
What
on
is
their houses with the blood.
what is
Also,
hyssop?
it's just a tree branch of some sort of plant.
Okay. Is it similar to incense? Because there's
No, I don't
it
think
shows up. it's used with incense a lot, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's a like a branch type.
Okay.
Use it to like sprinkle stuff.
Okay. Because and they're gonna burn this cow and then put it into water. So it's gonna be like this potion. The the priest shall then wash his clothes and bathe his body in water afterward come into the camp. See, he's become unclean or something just by doing this. But the
Yeah.
priest shall be, oh, there it is, it says it right there. But the priest shall be unclean until evening, right? So, all right, then they kind of need another guy to come in and help out. The one who burns it shall also wash his clothes in water and bathe his body in water and shall be unclean until evening. That sounds like the priest, same kind of thing. Now, a man who is clean, so this would be a different person probably. Now, a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer that was just burned, deposit them outside the camp in a clean place, and the congregation of the sons of Israel shall keep it as water to remove impurity. It is purification from sin. So I think it sounds like they mix the ashes in water and they just kind of keep it there like in a vat to use for, so when someone dies, you have to take care of you have to bury the body and all that. So then those people, then they have that, that purification water to cleanse the
Can
people.
we go out back up where what they were doing with the water, the hyssop thing was okay, cedar wood. I think the hyssop and the cedar wood together must be very perfumey
Oh
because
yeah, yeah.
the hyssop actually looks a lot like lavender. So I want to show you this real quick. Can you see?
Uh, I guess so.
Well, this is if you can see it, it looks a
I
lot
can
like
see it. Yeah.
it looks like
Oh, it's
lavender.
like that's like a flower. Is that a flower?
Yeah, but the long stem,
Mm.
they probably could have used that. So I'm guessing because it was used to like sprinkle stuff,
And it's purple.
but yeah, but it's very perfumey. So I think
Yeah, yeah. It makes
it's
sense.
it's how do we stop sharing this? Hmm. Okay, so when I read the passage, cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet material. So I think it's to make it smell good because they put the entire uh, calf in the fire, including his refuse. So like the whole thing was in there. So it probably didn't smell all that great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're burning an animal, so
Yeah, but it wouldn't
yeah.
smell like steak. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
probably wretched.
Yeah, they're not going to eat this. This is to take the ashes and put them in water and use
Yeah.
that to as a cleansing agent to for when all see they're preparing for all these thousands of people to die. Anyone over the age of 20, basically, it sounds like all the adults who left Egypt are going to die in the wilderness over the course of 40 years. So they need a system in place to cleanse those who have to take care of the body and all that stuff. So it's kind of the thematically, it's talking about the end of the first generation, the beginning of the next generation, and there's purification going on. And the next generation does much better, by the way, than the
That's
first
good.
generation. So let's
All
where
right.
did we stop here?
Uh,
Um,
9. Now the man who's clean gather up ashes.
10. I think we read that.
Okay.
Purification from sin. And the one who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening, and it shall be a perpetual statute to the
Mm.
sons of Israel and to the sojourner who sojourns among them. There's another perpetual statute that has ended.
Well, it was part of their, so it's a lot of administration, right? It's their little mini government by God, how to deal with things. Like we take everything for granted now because
it's
it's all
it's like the
glorified.
Constitution. The Constitution is kind of perpetual until it's not, until they figure out a way to get rid of it. Something like that, right? Because it
Well,
like
but they didn't need to do the sacrifices anymore like they're doing now. They don't need to do the sin
yeah,
offering
it's
and
been
go,
fulfilled. This has been
yeah.
fulfilled. So
Right.
it's which means it's ended, fulfilled in Christ. doesn't mean it's done away with, but there's a kind of a slight nuance there that it's been fulfilled. Being fulfilled is different than being canceled, right?
Yeah.
Because it
It,
means it went to its completion. It was completed as intended rather than ending too soon.
yeah, because they were using atonement with animal sacrifices, and that was perpetual if Christ didn't come. But since he became the substitute final sacrifice for us, the statute is no longer valid.
And the Judaizers always use this, everlasting statute or everlasting covenant language to say the Mosaic covenant is still in force today. But yet none of them are killing baby cows and putting the ashes in a bucket of water.
No, they're not doing anything in any of the Torah commandments. Nobody's doing that
But they
because
say they are.
they're not in the wilderness with God, having to live in that environment to take care of and be sanctified, made holy, learn the ways of God. They're not doing any of that. And they don't even know the reasons why they were doing all this stuff. You got to know the reason. It has context. Without
Yeah.
context, it's just nothing. And then God already said all of these words are made into flesh. So right now, flesh is being killed and then put into word, but then the words itself is actually Jesus. So that I think you just have to know like the context, their story stopped after the 5 books, right? It didn't continue. So now, if
Well,
they
this is the Mosaic covenant, which I believe ended at the cross.
it did,
Yeah, so
but
they
they
probably
stopped.
were supposed to do this kind of stuff. You don't really hear about it too much anymore after this, but maybe they're supposed to keep doing this, and as long as the Mosaic covenant was valid and
Yeah,
in place.
but when
But
did
the
it
main
become?
point, see, we've come across this word almost every episode, and it's just important for people to understand. Everlasting or perpetual covenant doesn't it means that it's perpetual as long as that covenant is valid,
Yeah, the
right?
covenant is valid, except the one who gave the statute overrode it. And that's the part that
Yeah,
missed.
yeah,
So
okay.
if if they were in the land and if they weren't scattered to come back and, this temple not being destroyed, all of the future prophecies and the events that took place, if that never happened and they were just continuing on with God's Mosaic laws, they probably could do that, but that's what they're trying to do. But they kind of over skipped majority of the book, right? Because so what they're wanting to do now is to bring back this temple type of sacrifice once again.
That's why Paul calls them Judaizers. A
Yeah.
Jew, Paul the Jew is actually calling people like this Judaizers in the Bible, in the book of Galatians.
Well, Jesus is also a Jew, so we should not forget that. Like he was not some normal man, right? So he was Jews. He came to the
He
Jews. He tried to tell them about himself to the Jews. It's only because of their rejection that all the promises went
and he
elsewhere.
he kept the Torah, and but then see this Mosaic he kept the Mosaic covenant himself, but it ended at the cross.
Yeah,
So of course
he
he kept
followed
it
it.
during his lifetime on earth because it was still in force at that time, and he fulfilled it at the cross. So when he's keeping the Torah while he's walking on earth, it's because he hasn't quite fulfilled it yet. And then it's been
Right, and
fulfilled
then
at the cross, and then he goes to heaven.
he also addressed all those leaders, the Sadducees and Pharisees who knew the law, who were
We're
made.
going to see an episode today, actually. There's an episode where Jesus talks to a Pharisee that actually relates to today's passages. So,
Great. All right, let's
anyway,
keep going.
perpetual statute. All right. So, look into that, people. What does this really mean? And if it does mean we have to keep doing it, then go out and kill a baby cow, burn it, put it in a bucket of water.
Yeah,
If not, then it's not perpetual. You know what I mean?
I mean, you're gonna
So,
need a lot of baby cows with all the sin
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
atone.
exactly.
So good luck with baby cow farms that are going to be
Yeah. So
heated.
I mean it's yeah. The one who touches the corpse of any person shall be unclean for 7 days. Yeah, see, this is what this is for. It's for these people who touch a corpse. It's not for the dead body. They're dead already. And death is one of the worst, most unclean things, right? That's
Yeah,
because
it's decay and death. In fact, that what happened from Adam and Eve's sin.
yeah.
So everything was already immortal, perfect, good, as God described it. But as soon as the sin entered, everything became decay and death. So he's never going to call death in any way clean. It's always going to be unclean.
Well, he came, and we're going to see it today as well. He came to give us eternal life. He died on
Right.
the cross to give us eternal life, which is, the
That's the clean
um,
part. So
yeah,
we're kind of living in an unclean world, but we're going to go into a
yeah.
clean realm.
All right, that one shall purify himself from uncleanness with the water, and this is the water with the ashes, on the third day and on the seventh day. And see, this would have been red probably because of all the blood, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I've never burned a baby cow, so I don't know what it looks like, but it's probably kind of red with all the blood. I do see a lot of
Well,
dead
the
animals on
blood
a regular
would,
basis.
well, the blood burns up, so everything turns
Oh,
charred
really?
black, Yeah.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah.
because once it oxidizes, the red is gone. The red is from the iron. And once it's
Mm,
oxidizes and burned up, it's gonna go back to black. But
okay.
the third day and the seventh day have relevance. So the third day is always in reference to uh, Jesus died on the cross and resurrected the third day. And the seventh day is the holy day where God rested. And then the water is always that signify to make things pure
Ah,
and clean, like the baptism. Uh,
yeah.
so the purification is really like kind of doing the baptism ritual in a way.
Yeah, this is kind of like a baptism in a way, a
Yeah,
purification. Because
right,
that makes sense. And there's death and then there's life kind of
right.
involved in all
After the
this too.
third
Okay.
day, it's life in reference to
Mm,
Jesus resurrecting.
interesting.
So
Interesting.
the seventh day, I guess we have to keep reading because I'm not really sure what it's trying to do on the
And
seventh
then
day.
he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the third day and on the seventh day, he will not be clean. Anyone who touches a corpse, see, they need to know this, right? Because they're all going to die. All these, all the first generation are about to die over the course of the next, 40 years. So they need to know how to deal with all this stuff.
Yeah, but God
Anyone who,
haven't told them yet that they're all going to die.
no, that he has in chapter 14. We read that already.
Oh, well, did he say
That
they're
he
gonna
told them all.
die?
Yeah, they all know that the first generation is going to die in the wilderness. And that see they're on the border here. They're right here. They're around here somewhere, and all they got to do is go right here, you know. They're
Yeah,
like right next to this promised land, but they have to wait there for they're basically waiting. They're not wandering or getting lost. They're
yeah,
waiting because they
right.
have a sentence because of their rebellion. The punishment was you guys cannot enter the promised land. They don't have faith, right? They didn't have faith basically. And so they're just right here waiting. And they know they have to wait for 40 years. They know that it was in chapter
Oh, yeah,
14.
yeah,
It's
yeah. They had a sentence, right? Um,
after that thing, yeah, after that incident where
well,
they rebelled again.
okay, but in that one, they were just told that they had to wait 40 years, but it didn't say you were gonna die.
No, it did. It did. It did.
Oh, all
I
right.
mean, do you want to see it?
No, I
But
trust you.
yeah, just go look at chapter 14 somewhere in there. It
I don't
tells
know
them
why I keep
the first
forgetting.
generation, not the probably not the children who left Egypt, and not the ones who were born in in the wilderness, but yeah, they're
Oh,
told
I
they're all
think
going
I
to die.
remember. The children weren't going to be punished the same as their parents.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
talked
yeah.
about that one.
So the entire first generation are not going to enter the promised land. I mean, they're going to die of old age or whatever, but
Yeah.
they're going to die and before they can enter the promised land. And so that's why they need to know this information right here.
Yeah.
And they would be doing these purification rituals or whatever they call it, this purification thing, this red heifer ritual. They'd be doing this for, over the course of, it'd really be like 38 years probably.
Yeah.
Um, so
But some of
um,
those rituals, they were told to do that in Leviticus on not touch,
well, not this
never
one
be
though, not
touched.
this one exactly though. This
Yeah.
is a new one. Yeah,
The
this
red
red
heifer. Yeah.
heifer. Yeah, this is a new one, and this is for all the people who are going to die. So actually, if you think there's 2 million, so maybe like 1 million people. Let's just keep it simple. Say there's half the people who left Egypt would die in the
About a
wilderness, the
million.
adults. That would be like a large number of people every day on average, probably more
Yeah.
towards the end. So that would be a lot of people. Although I have a much lower um,
I know. But let's
idea,
just go
which
with your idea.
I
Let's just
made a
go with the
big
Bible says,
discovery.
huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that later, but I have a lot more. Anyway, so just think about the logistics of this, right? A lot of people are dying almost on a daily basis, really.
Yep.
So they'd be
Well, there,
quite
I mean,
busy.
natural deaths would happen even without intervention. But
Yeah,
with
yeah.
God's judgment, surely there would be a lot more deaths.
Yeah, either way, whether it's of old age or whatever,
Yeah.
sickness, there are a lot of people dying on a daily basis at some point, so they have to do all this stuff. So,
Yeah.
um,
So this is
so
kind of like the funeral homes of today to prepare
yeah.
for dead bodies, right? So they're
Yeah,
kind of,
we have
yeah.
a whole industry like this now.
What are they
Yeah.
called in modern times?
Mortuary,
Mort
the
the guy
mortician,
who, yeah,
funeral home.
yeah. So these guys are essentially them, right?
Kind of, yeah, I guess so. That makes sense. Yeah. Although the ones today are probably not really pure. I mean, they're kind of physically, you know, cleaning things up a bit, but
Yeah.
uh
I mean, they have
not
their modern day
spiritually.
standards, and they're
Yeah,
not
yeah, but
burning
that's yeah.
cows either, but
Yeah. But this is specifically not just for the corpse, but for anyone who touches a corpse,
yeah,
right? So the body
which
of a
makes
man who
total
has
sense.
died. Yeah, and then so if you just touch a corpse or you're around death, you're also unclean. Does not
Yeah,
purify himself, makes the tabernacle. Okay, so it makes the tabernacle of Yahweh unclean. So they're
yeah.
always that's a lot of this blood sacrifices are cleansing the tabernacle.
Well,
And
if
that
you know
person,
anything about CSI type stuff, all of that stuff gets transported onto the human and it gets spread everywhere. All the germs and even
oh
like
really?
the modern, so pregnant women who were in deliveries, they figured out there was a very high mortality rate, like 50 to 80%. Women dying, giving birth in these, uh, 50 or 60 years ago hospitals because, or no, in the 1800s, whenever that time frame when they didn't used to wash their hands. So they figured out because the doctors would go in the basement, do autopsies, dealing with the dead, and then they wouldn't wash their hands. And then they go deliver the baby, and the women would get infections and die, right? And the baby more often would die too. Because to them, they didn't differentiate the dead body versus the living. They never made themselves clean. So once they started having the hand washing stuff implemented, and now, it's insane. They'll put on masks and everything else. But before the bubble suits, uh, if they had just washed their hands, that would have prevented like 90% of all the infections. So when this is happening, when you're dealing with the dead, uh, once you touch it, you are unclean. Like you are able to carry those diseases elsewhere. So
Wow.
they had
Yeah,
to,
yeah, that makes sense. That's true. Yeah, so there's kind of a practical aspect to this
yeah. Well,
as
yeah,
well as it's a
spiritual,
medicinal. Yeah, it's kind of
right.
like medicine or prevention, that kind of thing. Safety.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
they it makes sense because with all these people dying in this camp, there was a threat of disease spreading,
yeah, I mean,
right?
a lot of these Mosaic laws, it was not just spiritual laws, but there was physical laws that had to keep the community clean and free of diseases,
Mm.
especially when you're talking large population, right?
Yeah, I mean like 20,000, 30,000.
Or a million or two. So, but these kinds of things, you think, well, we're not really doing that today. We kind of are. We are taking some of those Mosaic laws and made them
Oh yeah.
applicable
Well, think about
today.
the garbage man. In fact, I thought of the analogy of a garbage man because they come around and take away the garbage, but
Yeah.
they themselves get quite dirty in the process, right? So that when
Yeah.
they're unclean by doing
Yeah.
that. They become
Right.
very unclean. So when they get home, they got to take a shower.
For
You know,
sure.
they're
Yeah.
taking away our garbage and then they become dirty through doing that.
Yeah.
So they're unclean, kind of
And
like
God
right
has
here.
to
Like,
protect them because the stuff that goes in the garbage is all kinds of toxic stuff. I mean, they already tell you what's in the water, like almost all the medications that people throw in the water. You can, if they traced everything, all the chemicals are there, stuff that stays in your blood forever, like the PF, whatever they're called. And so there's just enormous amount of stuff that gets put in the garbage and the water. So I think God is really protecting us even today from if you let that go, I think a lot more people would be sick. But yeah, I mean, he's doing that for good measure for the people to stay clean.
yep. Okay, and that person, so if the person does not purify himself, that person shall be cut off from Israel, because the water for impurity was not splashed on him. He shall be unclean, his uncleanness is still on him, cut off. So they're a threat to public health,
Yeah.
like me.
Why? What did
I
you?
mean, I
Oh,
didn't
yeah, yeah,
inject the magic potion. I didn't sprinkle the magic potion
all you had
on
to say
myself.
was you took the holy water and you're made clean.
So here, I mean, it's the same principle, right? The Satan has his definition of clean and unclean. And
Yeah.
if you're unclean, you're a threat to the community and
Now
you have
that
to
you
be cut
say
off.
that, that is okay. I just made a revelation about it. Yeah, I think it's actually coming from. So I see Satan like repeating things from whatever's in the Bible. He'll twist it and repeat it in a different way. And now I kind of see that connection of him trying to, when they were doing that, clean and unclean people. It
It's a
was,
covenant. The mark of the beast is a covenant with Satan. And to be
yeah.
in the covenant community of Satan in the world in Babylon, you have to do these rituals like injecting magic potions and pharmakia into your body.
But what's interesting is they were calling everyone unclean. Like they were angry.
Literally, that's the same thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, it's general principle of society is that you're either a member of society or not. And there's
Yeah.
criteria for any society. That's why nobody likes foreigners, you know, no matter where you go. Like if Americans don't like foreigners, but if American goes to a different country, then you're the foreigner and they don't like you, right?
Right.
It's because you're a threat to the public health. You're a threat to the community. You're an outsider, you know.
Yeah,
So
but God made laws. So every single law that we read so far, they were all good because he's saying treat the foreigners well. And then the foreigners had to
yeah,
join whatever they were told to do. Whatever they joined, they had to be doing the same thing. They couldn't do their own
sojourners.
thing.
Yeah, they had to
And
integrate.
yeah, integration. So like if we do go somewhere else, we have to do what they're doing in
Yeah.
terms of, you know,
Follow the laws. I got to
yeah.
follow the local laws.
Right, and customs and practices, right? Because it wasn't
If
just
I,
a law, it
yeah,
was like they were eating and drinking and cohabitating together. So they had to be like whoever they were cohabitating with. Um, so I guess if you go live, well, you're living on the east, coming from the west, and I'm coming from the east, living in the west. Isn't that interesting?
I guess so. All right. This is the law when a man dies in a tent. Everyone who comes into the tent and everyone who is in the tent shall be unclean for 7 days. And every
Oh,
open vessel which
okay.
has no covering tied down on it shall be unclean. Okay, go ahead.
The 7 days. Okay, I remember now. So I think in Leviticus it also defined days. So here it's telling like how long they stay unclean for 7 days, and up to 14 days was the cutoff. So why is that important? Because God dealt with all of those communicable diseases, and he didn't say beyond 14 days unless they were if they were like fully diseased and about to die or whatever. But on most, if they had a turning point, the turning point was 14 days, 7 to 14 days. Do you know why that's even important today?
No. Do you?
Because they took that 7 to 14 day spread rule and they made it into years. That's there was no reason to do that ever.
Who did, what are you talking about?
Uh,
Who did what?
Remember well, what's his name? Fauci and friends. Remember in the beginning, they said, we want to do this for 2 weeks, lockdown,
Oh, I see. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
7 to 14 days to slow the spread. What happened? They turned that into years. So
Ah,
biblically, it was always a stop at 14 days to turn around and like 7 days to 14. But like here, they're saying unclean for 7 days, then it's you're clean after that. But if there were other communicable diseases that we're talking about, the turning point was 14 days. So anyway,
okay. Interesting. Um, okay. Also, anyone who is in the open field touches one who has been slain with a sword, who has died naturally, or human bone or a grave shall be unclean for 7 days. That would apply into like war, right? Which they're going to see
yeah,
a lot more of that pretty soon.
yeah,
Then for the unclean person, they shall take some of the ashes of the burnt purification from sin, ashes of the red heifer, and flowing water shall be added to them in a vessel. Yeah, there it is. See, they, they're they're they keep it. It's like some medicine or something that they keep ready. So it
right,
should be always ready to go, more or less, I think,
yeah,
because they're going to need a lot of it, right? They're going to be using this almost every day eventually.
right,
Um, And a clean person shall take hyssop and dip it in the water and sprinkle it on the tent and on all the furnishings and on the persons who were there and on the one who touched the bone or the one slain or the one dying naturally or the grave. And then the clean person shall sprinkle on the unclean on the third day and on the seventh day, and on the seventh day he shall purify him from uncleanness, and he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and shall be clean by evening. And also, it's possible that this was like normal Israelites were kind of doing this to each other. You didn't need the priest to sprinkle because it just says it's the clean person. I'm not sure if
well,
that's a
they
priest or
were
just a regular person.
they didn't need the priest for because they were doing that for other rituals too, like when a woman had menstrual period, she had to stay clean, and like there were this very similar rituals, not the sprinkling thing, but uh, they had to separate for a certain amount of time and then take a bath, and then until they were pronounced clean in the evening after they took a bath or something like that. So a lot of this language is similar. The sprinkling was a lot going on in Exodus when they had to sprinkle their houses. And I think I probably read this before, and maybe it's going to come up in Deuteronomy again. I'm not sure, but it does come up a lot.
Some people today, do a sprinkle baptism kind of thing.
Yeah.
They just sprinkle water on you. I don't know. All right. Wash his clothes. Okay. But the man who is unclean and does not purify himself from uncleanness, that person shall be cut off from the midst of the assembly, because he has made the sanctuary of Yahweh unclean. The water for impurity has not been splashed on him. He is unclean. That's exactly what happened to me. I was cut off
Yeah.
because
But they're the unclean. You're the
I
clean one.
didn't have any contagious diseases, but they told me I did.
Right. Well, they did that to a lot of people. Well, it was on
You know,
purpose. Comply or
so
die. That's what it
so
was.
in the 3 months ago, a friend of mine got Bell's palsy. Have you
Yeah.
ever seen that's the first time I've ever seen someone with it, where half his face was paralyzed. A friend of mine from church, and then just last Sunday, a guy had a stroke during the church service.
Oh,
I've
wow.
never seen anyone have a stroke before in my life, and I've never seen anyone have Bell's palsy before in my life.
Yeah, that's a common
I'm
thing.
seeing this,
I've seen
I'm
a
like
lot.
seeing it with my own eyes these days. So
Yeah.
Anyway, um,
Um, oh, I was thinking about the water that's being sprinkled. That's the one with the ashes in it, right?
yeah, yeah, this is the red heifer, the ashes of the heifer in the water.
But I think I'm trying to figure out why ashes and water.
Oh, you know what? There's a word play with the dust because the Adam
Yeah.
was created from Adamah, which is the dirt or the red dirt or something. There's
Yeah.
some connection with we're created from dust and then we go back to dust when we die. So I think the ashes represent the dust. I don't know. It all comes full circle somehow. It's like represents death, and then
Okay,
there's
but
life, ashes, and the color red. There's some wordplay in Hebrew that the words are very
well,
similar.
the dust is super important. It already has properties. Well, one, we're made out of dust. The chemicals, whatever God took from the ground, were made from dust. And then I made another connection now, which I wish I could
The-
talk more about it on here, but I can't. But anywho, so the drug that everybody should know what it is, right? Uh, ivermectin. That's
oh,
the guy who invented that. He found properties from the dust, the ground. That's what goes into the medicinal part.
hmm.
So it's very similar to what's happening here. That's all I guess I want.
There's oh, what was I going to say? I think the word used for ashes is the same as the word used for dust. You know what I'm saying?
Uh,
Not all the time, sometimes in this chapter. I don't have a note of it necessarily,
well,
but so
since they
sometimes
are
where
burning stuff, though,
yeah, so where it says ashes, I think sometimes the Hebrew is the same as the word that's used for dust in Genesis.
yeah,
So that's a possible connection. You could make that connection. It gets a bit deep, a bit hard to explain or even understand, but there's some connection with mankind being made from dust, and then we
yeah,
go
I
back to
think
dust when we die.
there must be some purification stuff that's in the ground because they're mixing ashes with the water, and that's what's getting cleansing everything as an agent. So if they're putting it on their furniture, the walls, everything else, that must prevent the bacteria or whatever it is from spreading because it's
Yeah.
contact with those ashes that gets water is just an agent to spread it easily everywhere. Um, but I knowing now in 2024 what I'm thinking, and then this is just my thoughts. I think the stuff that's in the ground, it does act like an antiviral stuff, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Or antibacterial.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are kind of like, I mean, where does medicine come from, right? It comes from plants. I mean, most of it was natural. I guess these days it might be synthetic, but a lot of it was kind of natural herbs and stuff like that. That's why they call it pharmakia. And that's because it can be used for healing, can also be used for sorcery, magic, witchcraft. It's powerful stuff either way, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
almost, you could say this is kind of a godly type of pharmakia
Oh, it is.
because
And he gives us
it's,
his
yeah.
medicines. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the light is medicine, sound, air, food, like everything that he gave us, it's all medicinal to take care of us, right? In our healthy environment. It's that we're corrupting it and making everything unclean. But he's given us ways to deal with that, even after it's been made unclean.
Yeah.
Because
All
they weren't
right.
going to have hospitals, right? They weren't going to have pharmacists. So he just says, here, do this, and that'll make your house clean.
They didn't have a Walgreens back then
Yeah.
or a funeral home or whatever. Even hospitals, really. They had
Yeah.
to kind of
They
do
had
everything
nothing.
themselves.
Right.
Yeah. They didn't have the CDC.
No. If
It's
ashes and water work to kill stuff, I'm okay with it.
well, I mean, we could try it out, I mean,
Yeah.
there are a lot of cows. There is right down the street from me. There's a bunch of cows. Maybe I'll go buy one of their cows and burn it, put it, see what
Yeah,
happens.
but I think these were special cows that God
I might
ordained.
need it. Everyone in my church is dying now, so
Yeah. Well, there are
Anyway,
remedies if they wanted to know about it, but
all
that's
right.
their choice, so I don't know.
All right, so let's finish off the chapter real quick here. So it shall be a perpetual statute for them, and he who sprinkles the water. I think they say this here, and it also makes them realize this is not just a one-time deal.
Right.
This is going to continue, basically, throughout your life and even your descendants. But for
Yeah.
us, when we read this, it doesn't mean we still do it today. And if you think this means we should do this today, then you better start doing this today. Otherwise,
And
there's
do
a
it correctly.
contradiction.
You can't just do it
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a
If you're going to say
ritual.
this still applies today, then please start
Yeah.
doing it and show us.
And do the whole
So,
thing from beginning to end very
yeah,
correctly, very
put your money where your mouth is, as they say.
right.
So it shall be a perpetual statute for them, and he who sprinkles the water for impurity shall wash his clothes, and he who touches the water for impurity shall be unclean until evening.
And
Furthermore, oh, go ahead.
now I'll let you finish.
Furthermore, anything that the unclean person touches shall be unclean. They better, what they should have done is socially distance. That's what they
Yeah.
didn't do. And the person who touches it shall be unclean until evening.
They
Yeah,
did
we
do
kind of
social
heard that a
distancing.
few times.
What do you mean social distance? They did do that.
Social distancing here in the book of Numbers in
Oh,
the
here.
anything
Yeah,
else?
yeah, yeah.
No,
Oh,
here these guys and wear the surgical splash guard.
yeah. But you know what I was thinking? So if they were using this as a purification thing with the ashes and the water, and if they are going to do a perpetual statute even today, that means they can't be using the store-bought stuff. No Kleenex, no none of that stuff, Clorox, right? If they were keeping it exactly as Mosaic law told them to do it, they have to do all of it perfectly. Like
And
they
they have
got,
to do it in the land as well.
yeah.
So it better get over to Israel if that's what you think the Holy Land is, then go there and live it out, live out your beliefs, what you're telling everyone else to do.
And they got to throw away all their cleaning products.
That's right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, all right.
All right, the
So
fun
chapter
chapter is
20.
the next chapter, 20, right? Oh, this is the fun.
Yeah, this one is let's see here. Let me get a verse ready here. I'm going to need numbers. Hold on a minute.
My thumbnail is going to be from this chapter.
Okay. All right, chapter 20. Now this is kind of it's kind of related to what we just read, but I'm going to show you something very interesting at some point. All right. So then the sons of Israel, the whole congregation, came to the wilderness of Zin, or probably Zin or something, in the first month. Oh, okay. Very interesting. First month of what year?
Uh,
Okay. First month, like the next year. How many years have they been in the wilderness up to this point? See, this is what I never knew this until now. And
I don't think I
at the
know.
end of it, you won't believe me at first, but you will eventually. But okay, so maybe we can get back to this in a minute. But so they're in the whole congregation in the first month, and the people stayed at Kadesh, and Miriam died. So they're basically right here's Kadesh, and now that word does mean holy. It's just the name of the town, I guess. Maybe there's a connection there. No, it
There's
now
the
it could say
wilderness of
Miriam dies
sin.
there, but yeah, there it is. There, which is kind of a region or something, but they're
Yeah,
basically right here.
yeah.
And but I think they stayed at Kadesh. I think they've been there a long time. Actually, they were there already before
Mhm.
this. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Okay, so okay, so just remember this first month. We'll get back to that.
Yeah.
Okay. First month of what year? That's the question mark. And I'm going to show you what year that was later on.
All
And it's
right.
going to blow your mind. Maybe
Mhm.
blow your mind. Now
All
there was no water for the congregation. Now this is very similar to, I think it was it Exodus 17? There was no water for the congregation. And okay, I got to talk about the first month. So Okay, no, yeah, okay. This is hard. It's hard to explain, but you're gonna see it eventually. There was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves against Moses and Aaron. So this exact same kind of thing, or very similar thing, happened in back in Exodus. And then people get really confused. They're like, "Wait, didn't this already happen?" So right, the people that's contended with Moses and spoke, saying, "If only we had breathed our last when our brothers breathed their last before Yahweh. Why then have you brought the assembly of Yahweh into this wilderness for us and our beasts to die here?" They're complaining again, right? They're
Yeah,
complaining again about lack of water. But really, what's happening here, this congregation here, this is basically, we just experienced a 38-year time jump.
yeah,
This is the second generation. This whole congregation,
yeah.
almost everyone has died.
Mm,
Miriam and Aaron and Moses are still alive, but two of them are about to die in this chapter.
yeah,
And so this episode of people complaining about no water, it's not the same people. It's the second generation is now kind of repeating the same mistakes that the first generation did, 40 years previously, or
mm,
38 years, whatever it was, 39 years previously. So a lot of people think that they're just kind of repeating the same old story, but this is actually the different people doing a very similar thing.
right.
You get what I'm saying here?
Yeah,
So just, you may not, people won't believe me yet that there's been this 38-year time jump with no mention of it. Only chapter 19 is basically representing that. It's basically saying, yeah, that period of time was just a period of people dying in the wilderness. That's
yeah.
what chapter 19 basically is saying. And here we have we're given a time indicator there. Now, it would make it much more clear if it told us the year, but it kind of does later on. Later on, it tells us what year this was. All right. So we
Um,
know, I'm not just making stuff up. This was a time jump. And we're going
so
to see the
we're doing a
year given to
cliffhanger
us
till we
later
get to
on.
the end.
What's
Um,
that?
we're doing a cliffhanger, or should we get to
Kind
it?
of. Oh, yeah, because we're just reading through it.
All right.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Well, I will prove that this is a 38-year time jump or whatever it is, 39,
So
40,
their
whatever.
kids are growing up and they're complaining.
This is the next generation.
Yeah.
And now they're complaining. They're starting to complain again, just like the first generation.
Right.
Okay. But they're not as bad. But see, this is the new generation. The old one has died off. But the new generation, they know about the plan of God, and God does intend to bring these people into the promised land.
Yeah.
Right? They know the plan. All right. So this is like the sequel. This is like the part two. We're in the second generation now. It's very important to know that. Otherwise, none of this will even make sense. All
Yeah.
right. Why then have you brought the assembly of Yahweh into this wilderness for us and our beasts to die here? Why have you made us come up from Egypt to bring us into this evil place? Is it not a place of grain or figs or vine or pomegranates?
Pomegranates. Pomegranates.
All right.
And
Nor is there water to drink. So they're kind of complaining. They're like, see that they're like,
that was,
40 years have gone by. Where's the promised land? Well, it's
yeah.
like, no, they haven't entered it yet. You know what I mean? So
Yep. That's the land that they were waiting for with all the,
yeah, and they're not in it yet. So they're getting a little bit impatient. I think what's happening is they know it's time. It's
right.
the first month. They know the time has expired. It's okay. Our sentence has ended. It's time
Mhm.
to go to the promised land. But
Yeah.
yet there's still no water. And where's the figs and all? Where's the land of milk and honey? Come on, let's get going here, right? So in a way, they're
So,
kind of anxious. They're excited to go to the promised land, but they're a little bit impatient. And there is
well,
no water. That's a problem.
anybody would be for 40 years out in the desert without,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but the thing is, when they say no water, do they mean no drinking water or no water to like,
Well, they're in the wilderness. Well, the thing is, yeah, I mean, they
you
must
can't
have
live
had
without
water
drinking
to
water.
survive. They may have ran out of water, but we're going to see. This is where Moses makes his big mistake.
Yeah.
Okay,
He
so
loses.
there was a thing in Exodus where he had to strike the rock, right? And
Yeah.
that was a good thing, no problem. But now in the second generation, we're going to see what happens here. Then Moses and Aaron came in from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting, and fell on their faces. Then the glory of Yahweh appeared to them, and Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Okay, so they're at the tent of meeting.
Yeah.
Now remember those the thing with the rows, the buds coming out of the rods
Yes,
for
but you
Aaron.
didn't like my girly thumbnail.
Not when you got people falling into the pit.
All right,
It's just
okay,
a
but the
choice. I
rosebud,
mean,
yeah.
you could, yeah. But so those rods are going to come into place again here.
Okay.
And remember, it's the Aaron was confirmed to be the priest, right? So take the rod. Now this rod, I believe, because they placed the rod of Aaron into the tent of meeting, it's
Hmm.
probably that rod. But Moses
Yeah.
also has one as well. The staff.
Yeah.
Take the staff or the rod, and you and your brother Aaron assemble the congregation. So remember, they had placed that thing in the tabernacle. So now he's telling them to take it back out.
Yeah.
Take Aaron's rod. Aaron doesn't have his rod, but now he does. But Moses is probably holding it right here. And speak to the rock. Speak. Notice here it says speak. We better put that in the box. Speak to the rock before their eyes, that it may yield its water.
Oh, he wasn't
So
supposed to
God
strike it.
God wants to give them water. God wants to show his mercy in a supernatural way. This second generation, they don't quite know, right? They were either very young when they at the Exodus, or they were born in the wilderness. So they didn't even most of them probably didn't even experience the Exodus themselves. They were born in the wilderness over the course of 40 years. So they haven't, and we don't know what happened the last 38 years because there's nothing mentioned about it. So God is like, okay, I'm going to show these guys a miracle, right?
So he
I'm
wasn't
God
supposed to hit it, he was just supposed to talk to it?
Speak to the rock before their eyes, that it may yield water. That's what it says.
And the
Whereas
other
before he
thing
was
is,
supposed to strike it, and he
yeah.
did, and it was okay. There was no problem back in Exodus. I think it's Exodus 17, somewhere around there. Um, Yeah, so that's one of the big problems. Okay, you shall thus bring forth water for them out of the rock, and let the congregation and their beasts drink. So God is like being merciful. Like they need water. That's a legitimate
Well,
issue to
yeah,
bring
you
up.
don't get to live after a couple of days
Yeah.
without it.
Yeah,
So,
it's not like they're complaining about lack of food or whatever, or the
right.
manna, which I think they do again as well.
Oh,
But
yeah, they do complain about that again. But the interesting story about the rod, the bud was the almond bud,
yeah,
almond flower, whatever.
yep.
That was, I kind of looked it up. It said something about that God is watches, uh, I don't know, something about God watching. So the fact that he's using the almond bud rod to not strike it, but what was he supposed to do with the rod then?
Well, let's just read what happens here. Okay. So here it is. Here's the passage. What happens? All right. So Moses took the rod from before Yahweh, the one that was in the tabernacle,
Yeah.
which was probably, not don't know for sure, but maybe it was Aaron's rod that had sprouted just as he had commanded him. So up to this point, he's obeying God, right?
Hmm.
Up to this point. But after that, he does not obey God. So he took the rod like he was supposed to. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock, and he said to them, "Listen now, you rebels." I mean, and try to imagine the tone of voice, right? And maybe today he would use a much worse, curse word or something, right?
Hmm.
Listen now, you rebels. Now, they're not really rebelling that much necessarily, a little bit,
Well,
but I
they
mean, but
weren't,
see that God just told them, give them water, you know,
yeah,
be nice to them, show them
right,
mercy. Listen now, you rebels.
right.
See, that's not representing what God told Moses to do. So there's two things, right?
Yeah, he
Shall
went
we bring
ahead.
forth water for you out of this rock?
Right,
For you. I think what he said is, shall we bring forth water for you, you rebels? Do you
right,
deserve any water?
right. Yeah, so he
You
kind of
rebels.
overstepped their complaint and dismissed it.
Yeah. See, now Moses is kind of complaining. Moses lost his patience and his
Right.
mercy. He's supposed to be the intermediary. to argue for the people. That's what he usually does, is he's
Yeah,
like,
but
oh, please show mercy on these people. They don't know what they're doing. But now he's totally lost his patience, and he's not the one to lead them in the promised land anymore. He served
but
his
he got
purpose.
tired. I honestly think by that time he's just tired. Look at all the stuff he
Yeah.
did up until that point. It's
Well, he's
amazing
like, oh
about
no,
all that.
not again. He's probably
Yeah.
worried, oh no, we're never going to enter this promised land with these people. They
Yeah.
don't stop complaining. So, but yet God had a plan to bring these people into the promised land, right?
I mean, what if all
So,
of this is a typology of us, like right
well,
now?
it kind of
Are we
is.
going to
It
be
is.
missing the
Well, the
promised
New
land
Testament
themselves?
refers back to Numbers a lot, the whole thing, because it's all
Yeah.
rebellion, right? Rebellion, and it's rebellion, um, punishment, repentance, and mercy
What
or
if
forgiveness.
because nobody knows the day and the hour when Jesus returns. What if our journey could have been short, but it just kept getting extended because of
Yeah,
similar to this 40-year judgment
probably.
on that? What if staying here is our judgment longer and longer to because we're not ready?
Well, we are in many ways. We're in the wilderness between the cross and the second coming,
Yeah,
right? We're in that
right.
kind of in between stage, right? There's still the promise of the promised land. We're still waiting for that, just like these guys
Yeah,
here.
right.
Yeah. So, all right. So you see, there's two things. So okay. So the first thing he does. So right now he obeys God there, but now the first mistake is he calls them rebels. He's basically saying you scumbags, you don't deserve any water. You
Yeah.
know, that's what he's saying basically. Then Moses raised high his hand. Remember the sin of the high-handed sin. That's just kind of interesting. We do see those two words right there, right?
Yeah.
Raises high his hand. And so now Moses is doing his own thing. He's not obeying God. Moses
Well,
is
he's
has become
angry.
the authority, but
Yeah,
he's also kind of pretending like he's the boss now instead of
right.
God. Moses raised high his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. Whereas probably he was supposed to hold the rod up as a symbol of peace or something like that. He wasn't supposed to
Well,
strike. He had the
no,
rod. He was supposed to get the rod, the staff, but he wasn't supposed to strike the rock.
no, and you know why this is bad that he did that? Because
Why?
the rock symbolizes Christ. He's the rock, right? So the rock
Yeah,
is going to give forth water willingly, and all he had to do was talk to the rock. It was basically talk,
yeah. So yes,
symbolically, it was
speak to
talking
the
to Christ,
rock.
right? But by striking the rock, he essentially struck Christ twice.
Yeah, yeah, struck and then water came forth abundantly, and the congregation their beasts drank. So water did come out of it, but
Yeah,
not in the way God wanted. God wanted Moses just to speak to it, and then water would come out, and they'd be like, "Oh wow, that was like a miracle," right?
right.
Now maybe you could say now it looks more like Moses did it himself. Like Moses is giving them water, but not in a really kind and merciful way,
Well,
but
yeah, and also God wanted to demonstrate the power, the miracle that was happening by talking, because it was water also uh, represents life. It represents the living Christ, living waters, and the fact that it's an abundance, right? So it was going to be a miracle, just like when Christ did the miracle with feeding the many with 5,000 loaves and fishes and stuff. So it was the abundance that was going to come out of the rock, but the rock is always a symbol for Christ. He's our rock. So when he struck it, he essentially interfered with.
yeah, and there's this kind of purification, this water. I mean, someone should write a book on water, right? It's just so
Yeah.
symbolic of purification and all this stuff. Um, yeah, so it was in this next generation is kind of getting ready to enter the promised land now because 40 years have gone by. Um, so okay, okay, but Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me to treat me as holy in the sight of the sons of Israel. So that's really what they did wrong.
Yeah.
They may so maybe what happened is Moses didn't believe that he could just speak to the rock and water would come out.
Right.
That's maybe part of it too. You didn't believe me that all he had to do was speak to the rock. So you
Yeah.
struck it because you thought that was the only way, because that's what he did before. He
Right.
thought that would be the only way for water to come out is you have to strike it. But no, you don't even have to strike the rock anymore. Just speak it and water will come out. He did not believe that.
Yeah.
He didn't obey, because if you don't believe it, you're not going to do it, right?
Right.
It's kind of like those spies who didn't want to enter the land as well. They didn't trust God, that God could allow them to defeat the giants, right? You
Yeah.
didn't believe I could do a miracle, basically.
But he's already seen it, so it doesn't make
In
sense.
the sight of, yeah, so and then everyone else saw it too. So he was supposed to represent God, but he did
Oh, you
not.
know
He totally
what?
failed.
Yeah, because the new generation hasn't seen the miraculous stuff as their forefathers and before.
Exactly, exactly. That's why this was so important.
Yeah, so in each generation, he does do miracles for them. Have you noticed
Yeah,
that?
well, yeah, yeah, and also because they were about to, to enter the promised land is not an easy thing. So they kind of need this. They need to see
Yeah,
that
but I
God
mean, like
is with them.
they need because back then they were using that as a vehicle for faith too, right? To believe in
Yeah,
Yahweh.
there's always prophets. There's God was always involved somehow with these people. Um,
But this generation hadn't seen any miraculous stuff like parting the Red Sea and the 10 plagues on Pharaoh. None of that big stuff.
exactly. Yeah. So this was going to be maybe even the first miracle they really saw,
Yeah.
and Moses totally blew it. And so I think he kind of got fired. Basically, he's like, "Okay, you're not the right guy to lead them into the promised land. Apparently,
Yeah. Well,
job well done. You've done a lot of stuff so far, but your time is up.
yeah.
You take a break."
So that can
Right?
happen even to the best of the prophets, and God chose.
Yeah, so those were the waters of Meribah, because the sons of Israel contended with Yahweh, and he proved himself holy among them. I guess that means contention, this word here. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, and especially Moses and Aaron. So that was Moses's big rebellion right there. Which
Yeah.
if you just kind of read it casually, it doesn't seem like a big deal. You're like, well, what did he do? I used to think, well, what did he do wrong? I mean, because I probably would have done the same thing, right? I mean, I would have lost my temper a long time ago.
Well,
But
that I understand, but I mean, he was a good, obedient, humble guy up until this point. So what happened that he
yeah,
stopped believing all of a sudden?
probably because it was the second generation repeating the same exact mistakes as the first generation.
Yeah, that part I get,
It
but
drove him crazy.
yeah, I think that's probably what it happened. He just got
Yeah.
tired. And because he knew God's miracles from the very beginning, he knew it from baby because he was chosen and
He,
told, you know?
he may have thought God would also be upset with these people and not allow them to enter the promised land, because he called them rebels, which is what the
Yeah.
first generation were, rebels, absolutely. But the second generation, they're not really rebels, actually, not as much at least. And I think
No, I think they,
God didn't see them as rebels. God was like, I'm no, this generation is going to go into the promised land because that's my will.
right,
But Moses didn't quite realize, Moses kind of lost his faith, and he thought, oh no, here we go again. You know,
right.
the second generation won't even get in the promised land either. So he just totally lost. Moses kind of lost his hope, his faith, that kind of stuff.
Which is kind of
So
very relevant today. Like each generation that comes, we never.
yeah, I mean, we're supposed to hope and wait for the second coming, right? And then
Yeah, but
eventually,
then
we
God
kind of lose our
also,
patience.
I think we are, but we forget that God can show himself and do miracles for the new generation. We just think they're reprobate, whatever. But the truth is, God has to reveal himself to them too. I mean, through the word, yes, but he also has to show them wherever they are. Like we think we're better or more wiser, but we're just in that same time frame. Like every generation has to talk to God.
Yeah. And then, okay, so they're going to go from like here. to here now, more or less. Some these maps are not always exactly accurate, and sometimes we just don't know exactly, but this is somebody's
Well,
estimate
you should
apparently.
bring this map back because I did read ahead or listen ahead. Moab and Edom come into the story pretty
Well,
soon.
that's what yeah, exactly. Right
Yeah.
here, in fact. All
Oh,
right,
oh, is
let's
that
keep
20?
going.
Is that chapter 20? Oh, no.
We're in the middle of 20.
Oh, okay.
So the Moses striking the rock story is ended. All
Yeah.
right. From Kadesh, Moses then sent messengers to the king of Edom. Remember Edom, the history of that with the there's some pretty strong animosity between Edom and the Israelites, with
When? Before then?
Esau. Yeah, I mean that's a whole backstory,
Oh,
but
the Esau
which
story?
yeah, these are the descendants of Esau,
All right.
and they're still kind of a little bit upset about losing their birthright.
Mm-hmm.
Thus your brother Israel has said, notice he calls him brother, right? Your brother Israel has said, you know all the hardship that has befallen us, that our fathers went down to Egypt, and we stayed in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians treated us and our fathers badly. So we cried out to Yahweh, and he heard our voice and sent an angel and brought us out from Egypt. Now behold, we are at Kadesh, a town on the edge of your territory. So there's some debate. Maybe Kadesh is closer, but anyway, um, please let us pass through your land. We will not pass through field or through vineyard. We will not even drink water from a well. We will go along the king's highway. We will not turn to the right or to the left until we pass through your territory. Edom, however, said to him, you shall not pass through us, lest I come out to meet you with the sword. Again, the sons of Israel said to him, we will go up by the highway, and if I and my livestock do drink any of your water, then I will pay its price. Let me only pass through on my feet and nothing else. But he said, you shall not pass through. And Edom came out to meet him with a heavy force and with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to allow Israel to pass through his territory, so Israel turned away from him. Then they set out from Kadesh, and the sons of Israel, the whole congregation, came to Mount Hor, so, which is right there. So I think what happened, see, here's the deal. They really should just go up here, right? It's much shorter. But this is where all the giants were. In Gaza, that's where Goliath comes from. There's a lot of giants and whatever. They're afraid of these people are strong and powerful. So they want to go over here, and they do eventually go over here and around up here. That's where they cross the Jordan eventually in the book of Joshua, up here. They kind of go the long way around, right?
Mm-hmm.
They could have just gone straight up north, but I think they're gonna have a little battle, I think, pretty soon as well. So that there's a go right here to Mount Hor. All right. Death of Aaron. All right. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, right? Well, this doesn't look like it's on the border of the land of Edom. So it's possible it's closer, or Edom was larger. A lot of people, we just don't quite understand the geography as well as we'd like to,
Yeah.
apparently. There's debate about all these things.
Edom
Um,
could be bigger.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So Aaron will be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to the sons of Israel, because you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. That's what we just read about.
Yeah.
So Aaron is kind of blamed also,
Mm.
Aaron and Moses. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, his priestly
Uh-oh.
uniform, and put them on his son Eleazar. Now Eleazar is now the high priest. So Aaron will be gathered to his people, which means he's going to die, and will die there. And now it's interesting though, because they take him up to a mountain to die on a mountain, which I
Yeah.
think is somehow relevant or symbolic of something. You know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah.
kind of forgiven, or he's not like going to hell or anything. You know what I mean? He's like he's okay. where he's going to die because the mountain is kind of closer to God. It kind of represents
Yeah, that's where Moses
God.
met God and his face was shown when he talked to him up on the mountain.
Yeah. But I think this is a different mountain here, but
Yeah,
but going up on a mountain is significant. It's kind of a sign of like forgiveness or something. And
right.
I don't know. And okay. So Moses, and it's interesting. It almost sounds like God is God. I mean, does God just know he's about to die, or is God actually killing him? I don't know. You know,
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason for him to die other than God just saying, your time is up.
I don't know. So Moses did just as Yahweh had commanded, and they went up to Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. And Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them on his son Eleazar, and Aaron died there on the
Okay,
mountaintop.
so yeah, but what did Aaron do to get that strict judgment? Because Moses,
Well, it just says, I mean, yeah, he was there with Moses. It's
it
possible
was,
he didn't. He was supposed to do something that he didn't do.
but that
Um,
wasn't even explained. It was Moses who did
no,
everything.
a lot of stuff is not really explained.
Yeah, but this seems like so harsh, like, how a general, if you like strip his titles, take
Yeah,
the
yeah,
office,
basically, yeah,
and then say, okay, you're dead. So,
yeah, yeah. It could be
or
that he
maybe
was he
God,
was supposed to he was supposed to do something, or he didn't do something he was supposed to do, whatever. But
well, the
yeah,
other softer interpretation is that maybe God knew he was about to die, so he arranged all this to,
yeah, and remember, he rebelled before as well. He rebelled in the past, although he did repent, you know. Um, then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. So Aaron died on top of the mountain.
it
Um,
doesn't say it was his judgment to die, was it?
well, he was going to die anyway at some point. So I think it's part of the judgment of the Israelites as well, just because the whole generation had to die. He's like the last one. He and Moses are now probably the only two survivors of all the people who left Egypt.
Yeah,
And this kind of
that,
represent
but
and
uh,
they're the leaders, right? And Aaron's the priest. So the priest of the first generation has to die, because they're not supposed to enter the land. Even Moses doesn't enter the land. He's still alive at this
so
point, but
maybe he didn't. What I'm trying to, I'm almost thinking that maybe God just knew he was going to die. Like I get all the other reasons
he
why.
can't enter the promised land though, because the whole generation was judged and
So you
sentenced
think
to
he
not.
was killed just because the new generation was about to enter the promised land?
It is the 40th year, by the way. So let's see here if I can find this
Moses
verse.
wasn't going to enter either.
Okay, so this is we don't find out until chapter 33
Yeah.
that Aaron died in the 40th year. See,
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
on the first day in the fifth month.
Right. So
So that's
five
how we
months
know there was
later.
this time jump. That's how we know there was a time jump.
Yeah.
Aaron died in the 40th year. You know what I mean? The thing is, if you remember in so we better go to Numbers 14 so we just to see what it says again. Right here. Oh, my computer's acting funny. Um, Numbers 14. I just saw it there. Sorry. My computer's all messed up. All right. I just saw, oh, here it is. No, not that one. Um,
You're talking about the year for every day judgment?
yeah. Uh, okay, right here. Numbers 14:29. This is God speaking. Your corpses will fall in this wilderness, even all your numbered men, that's the soldiers, according to your complete number from 20 years old and upward, who have grumbled against me. So you shall not come into the land, which I swore to make you dwell, except Caleb and Joshua. Only two people can enter the land. See,
Not
they
even
know that.
Moses.
Everyone knows this.
Yeah.
What's that?
Not even
Everyone knows this.
Moses. Well,
Not even Moses, not Aaron, not Miriam. Nobody. But your little ones, however, I will bring them in. So he says right here, I will bring them in. So they know that the second generation is going into the promised land,
Yeah.
so that they will know the land which you have rejected. So there should be no doubt that the second generation is going to go into the promised land. That's God's will. Even if they rebel a little bit, God's going to fix that situation. Just like us, God fixed it with Jesus. We didn't fix ourselves.
So Miriam
You know?
died naturally, and
Well,
God,
don't get too hung up on this. Did he die naturally or not? It's God is sovereign over all things anyway, right? So I
yeah, but
mean,
I'm trying to figure out what happened on the mountain. Was it
he
judgment?
died. It was time for him to no. Well, this is judgment right here for all of them to die in the wilderness. So he had to die in the wilderness too. 40 years, right here, the 40 years. All right, 40 years. 40 years. The time was up. It was time for him to die.
So he was
It probably
marked.
looked like a natural death. You know what I mean? It's not like God
Okay.
just came, but God arranged it to kind of for him to die on the 40th in the
Well, that's
40th
the
year.
answer. That's the answer. That
It's
his
not like
his
yeah,
40-year time was up.
yeah, who knows? Who cares?
No, but it matters
I don't
because
know. He died in the 40th year according to God's will somehow.
well, I don't think he
Uh,
just died. I think God ordained it
no,
that way.
God knew he was going to die, so they told him to go to the mountain, and then he died. So it was God's will. It was
Yeah.
God's will that he died. I don't know if you could say that everyone dies at some point.
No, I think it's more of God's will that he had to die. They're
He
just
had to
about.
die. It's symbolic. It actually happened, but it's also symbolic of the first generation dying off in the wilderness. And he's
Yeah, yeah.
the high priest. He has to die also
All
with the
right, he
first
died.
generation.
So let's move on.
And I just showed you he died in the 40th year,
Yeah,
right?
which
So they
I
know, and
agree.
that was the thing. It was after 40 years, this second generation is going to enter the promised land. And everyone knew what time it was. Everyone knew that was the time for this to happen now.
All right.
So anyway, so now Eleazar is the high priest of the next generation, right?
Yeah.
And now only Moses is the only one left from the first generation of people. Moses, Caleb, and Joshua
Yeah.
are three people left from the original Exodus who were adults at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Moses is really
So
old by now.
yeah, he's almost 120. All right, chapter 21. Are you ready? You
Yep.
ready? This one is pretty interesting as well. Now, then the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who lived in the Negev, there's the Negev, and
Hmm.
there's Arad, right? So this is the giants, and we're
Yeah.
gonna see the giants again right now. Now, I don't, again, I don't know if everyone here is a giant or not, probably not. And I think, the Rephaim, we talked about that. The
Yeah.
Rephaim were giants, but they could have been the kings, the giant kings, because it's going to say Og of Bashan. They say he was the last of the Rephaim, but yet there's still giants after him. So he may have been the last giant king because Goliath was still in his was after him. But anyway, it's a little confusing still. But then the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who's probably some kind of famous guy, right? They called him the Canaanite, who lived in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming by the way of Atharim, and he fought against Israel and took some of them captive. Notice none of them are really dying.
Mm.
In fact, I think it's possible in the entire book of Numbers, none of them are really said to have died in battle. Um, but so
Are.
now they're on the move, right? They've been kind of camped out here for like 40 years, it sounds like, or 38 years. Now they're on the move, and everyone kind of knows what's going on, right?
Yeah.
The Israelites are coming, you know. So some of them got taken captive. So Israel made a vow to Yahweh and said, "If you will indeed give this people into my hand," that would be these guys here, "then I will devote their cities to destruction."
Yeah.
Now this is kind of like an offering. That's why they had to destroy everything because they're giving if they devote something to destruction, that means they cannot take the plunder for themselves. They have to give it all to Yahweh, which means they have to destroy it. It's like a sacrifice. They have to kill everybody and all the stuff and all the animals and everything as a sacrifice to God. They're giving this to God. And it's the wrath of God coming upon the Canaanites. The wrath of God through the Israelites is coming. The host of right the Israelites are God's army, the
Which
host
God
of Yahweh.
explained. Uh,
The wrath of God, judgment is coming upon these people here. They're very evil, wicked people. They're idolaters. They worship demons. They're sacrificing children. They're transvestites. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and they're evil. Judgment is coming upon them. And up till now, in the book of Numbers, remember, God has killed thousands of Israelites
uh,
first. So the first generation was like if you think about the army of the first generation was a total failure. Their own commander was killing them. It was like basic training, and they all kind of failed the test, right?
yeah.
So if people have a problem with God going in and killing these wicked, evil Canaanites, which is just justice, right? Remember that God killed a bunch of Israelites first.
Well, he always rebukes his own first, and then
In his judgment. Yeah, it's
judges.
just think of a court where there's a mass murderer and the judge sentenced the mass murderer to death.
Yeah, and these
Is there a
people,
problem with that?
well, they were also doing very, very wicked things with. So the whole idea of
Abomination.
sacrificing children to Moloch uh,
Yeah, totally.
came
The
from,
Israelites did that eventually.
yeah, but the Canaanites when they were doing this. So the whole thing when God was teaching them, giving them laws to the Israelites about don't all the fornication stuff and not having relationship with your relatives of all those sorts, right? Don't have. So he had like all these laws what you couldn't have sex with. But in Canaanites, they didn't have that kind of
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah, yeah.
right? So
Exactly.
they
It
had
was kind
all
of
these,
ritual. Yeah, the
yeah.
fertility cults.
And then they were all these babies were really unwanted because they were doing very, very simple things. So like
Yeah, yeah.
if you have a husband and wife who has a baby, they usually never want to kill it if it's their own out of that wholesome relationship, right? But if it's
Mm.
unwholesome relationship, all these other children were being born that they didn't want, and then it became part of their ritualistic sacrifices to gain whatever they wanted to gain, but they were willing to offer up their children in horrific ways to die, which is
Yep.
the most sickest part of the whole thing. So judgment to them, and he did give him 40 years. I don't remember the story, but there was other parts of the stories somewhere that he brought mold or some sort of plague to the Canaanites in their houses while the other people were camped out in the 40 years. So like there was stuff happening to the Canaanites. I think he
Yeah.
even gave them a chance to repent, but maybe they just didn't. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
we will hear more about those 40 years like later on. They
Yeah,
kind of do flashbacks, they talk
yeah,
about it, but right now in the book of Numbers, they really just skip the whole thing. And you
yeah,
don't even know. I never understood that until now because I was like, wait a minute, what happened to the 40 years? Like,
yeah.
you know, so it was I learned
Well, it's a
something.
good find that you did make
Did you
that.
know that before?
No. When I read
Yeah.
it, I just thought it was kind of sequential, but
So, yeah, so and
knowing
for the
that now,
audience, it was this one. It's in Numbers chapter 33, verse 38. Aaron died there in the 40th year.
yeah.
So that's how we know there's a time jump. All right.
Did
So
you put that in the notes on the other one? Where you
what
had
notes?
highlighted it in the numbers you
Yeah, I mean, I have all these notes and I never look at them.
All right. Well, that was
I
a
have
good
too many.
one.
I have to I have to organize these later on, which I never do. But I think the act of taking the notes helped me kind of remember. So I'm just kind of
But I think you also put good context today, knowing that we're not really talking about the same people.
if we didn't know about this, see, we would find this out in chapter 33.
Yeah.
And then, but by then we probably would have forgotten about
Oh, yeah.
everything and we wouldn't
Very.
make that connection. So
Yeah.
yeah, so and the Bible is like that sometimes. It's like it's not as clear as you want it to be, you
Well,
know.
that's why
So
everybody who's watching this episode, I think they're going to get a lot out of it today. Uh,
yeah,
because
yeah.
that
So
that
this
whole thing wouldn't make any sense if you didn't know.
and even chapter 19 makes no sense. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So it was about all those people dying and
Right.
it's really now about the transition. And really now the rest of the book of Numbers is about the second generation.
Yeah, and him showing miracles to the second generation, getting
Yeah,
them prepared. There's a lot of typology, even with like Christ, symbolism and stuff. So he's getting them ready to now enter the promised land.
that's
And
right.
but he still has to deal with the giants, right? He still has to deal with the wicked people, which I think he was dealing with that silently without even telling us right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep going here. Then Yahweh heard the voice of Israel and gave the Canaanites over. So they devoted them and their cities to destruction.
But it doesn't say
Which
how
is,
they did that. How did they
well,
manage?
they did explain like later on we see it happening in like the book of Joshua. It's the same. They basically just destroy everything. It's a complete destruction of everything.
But how are
Men,
they
men, women,
able?
children.
But remember the other ones, they said, oh, they were giants. Remember how they
Well,
were?
this is yeah, I mean God gave them victory. Now these second generation, they're not afraid of the giants.
Yeah.
They want to they know that they want to enter the promised land. So they're better. They're kind of, you could say they're better than the first generation in that sense,
Well,
at least.
that I understand, but I mean, there were still some considerable size to overcome and
Well, I
destroy
mean, yeah. Well,
everything. Like
I mean,
how are they?
there's plenty of more battles to come. They're
Yeah.
not. No, this they didn't wipe out. This is that one city, I think.
It says
I guess.
cities to
Well,
destruction.
Yahweh heard the voice of Israel, gave the Canaanites over, so they devoted them and their cities to destruction. Thus, the name of the place was called Hormah. Sounds like, yeah. If you just read it, it kind of sounds like they took over the whole promised land in that one sentence. But no, no, just a little. There's Hormah right there. It's just a little
Yeah.
region here. Sometimes the Canaanites just refer to a small portion of the Canaanites. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's just talking about this battle here with this one guy, the Canaanite, the king of Arad, right? So this guy came out, took Israelites captive. Then the Israelites got, destroyed Arad, and this place is now called Hormah. But it's kind of this region here. They wiped these people off the face of the earth, basically,
Good
in
job.
in one sentence. Yeah, we don't have all the details there, do we?
Yeah.
And then they set out from Mount Hor by the way to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. So that's what this is all about, which is
Yeah.
kind of weird in a way. It's like, okay, we just wiped these people off the face of the earth,
But
but
they
now let's go
don't.
back down here and go all the way around. Why not, just keep going? Why not keep going? If you had a victory here, I would, keep going. You're doing pretty good so far. I don't know why that happened.
Huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Then okay, then the people became impatient on the way. So maybe it's the same thing, right? The people are like, "Hey, why are we just wiped these people out? Why are we going all the way back down here? There's the Red
Maybe it's
Sea.
God to test them again.
Why are we going all the way down here, going around Edom? We are a pretty powerful army. We just wiped these guys
Yeah.
out." I don't know. It doesn't explain it. Maybe later on it
I
explains
think
it.
it
And
will.
the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt? And this is like a refrain, it's like the same
Yeah.
old story. To die in the wilderness, for there's no food and no water, and we loathe this miserable food.
Oh, yeah. And I think the miserable food was still manna, though, for them.
Yeah, they had manna, they had quail. I don't know
Yeah,
if that was
other
every day
stuff.
or quail in the evening.
But
Um,
it says no food and no water. So, like, I think it was another test, maybe.
this is kind of what they say whenever they travel. Like if
Yeah,
they're at,
well, it
at,
is
at a
pretty
camp, they have food
miserable.
and water.
Well, aren't
Oh
you
yeah,
gonna
of
be
course it is.
miserable
Yeah.
without food
Yeah,
and
yeah,
water?
yeah. But this
Yeah,
sets us up here. So they're complaining again. And now, so it's always rebellion, judgment. repentance, and
And
forgiveness.
forgiveness.
It's
Yeah.
the four. It's always over and over and over. So now we're going to have we have a rebellion. Now we're going to have the judgment. We have
Oh.
another plague. Pestilence is coming again for the
Oh.
second generation, and this is the famous passage.
And I thought they
Okay,
were supposed to enter right away, but they're not even gonna, huh? Even
it's
they're
not that
dying.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now we have kind of the last interesting story, I think, from this
Yeah.
episode here, the bronze serpent. So
Yeah.
Yahweh sent. Now, some people say this means revealed,
No,
or
you just
sent.
talk
But
to the serpents to go get
well,
them.
these would be probably cobras. If they're just physical snakes, they were poisonous snakes. Which there are cobras in the area, and there's a lot
Yeah,
of. I
cobras
mean,
and others. They don't
and
have.
serpents, they're snakes, but they're also highly symbolic, as we know from Egypt and all of the Canaanites. Everyone had this serpent symbology. There may have been
Well,
a serpent cult at the time as well.
and
Um,
uh, the staff with the bronze serpent
no, no,
around
no. That's
that.
what we're reading right now.
Yeah, but I mean that also became the medical symbol as well, right?
Yeah, I just
But
I
I
just put
think
a video.
before then, um, I don't know if the Israelites were really practicing the Egyptian
No, no, no.
serpent
Right
thing.
now they do though. Okay, let's read it.
All
Then
right.
we'll talk about it. So Yahweh sent fiery serpents. They're not practicing anything regarding this.
Right.
Yahweh,
So why
the
couldn't he
serpents
just?
appeared basically somehow and
Well,
among
they're
the
in the
people,
area.
and they bit the people so that many people of Israel died. So they're getting bit by these snakes, whether they're physical or supernatural, whatever. They're getting bit by them physically. They're
It
probably
is
cobras,
supernatural. Well,
and they
cobras and
died.
everything else. But do you remember when I think it maybe in the New Testament it talked about like by faith, like the snakes wouldn't harm them.
We're
Like
gonna we're gonna
all.
see the whole. We're gonna talk about all this stuff.
All right.
But we have to read this first because this stops at this is only like 4 verses,
All
this
right.
whole thing. And then we'll look at the other passages.
Okay.
Then the people came to Moses and said, "We have sinned." Oh, look at this. Okay, so you got rebellion, right? Complaining. Complaining is rebellion. And then we got judgment or punishment, right? People died.
Yeah.
And Yahweh, it says Yahweh sent them. So God is killing more Israelites again.
Yeah.
Really. And
Fine.
and then we have repentance,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And now we're gonna this thing on the pole is forgiveness. Okay, salvation, you could say,
Yeah.
or mercy, grace, whatever. All right, we have sinned. Look at that. So now the first generation didn't really say this, did they? Not to, I don't, did they ever say this? Maybe they did. I don't know. Not too many people in the first generation said, "We have sinned."
Yeah.
Aaron said it once.
Yeah.
Um, that's a huge difference in the second generation,
Yeah.
right? Because we have spoken against Yahweh and against you. And they even understand how they sinned and what the problem was.
Right.
Pray pray to Yahweh that he may remove the serpents from us. And
Hmm.
Moses prayed for the people. So now Moses is doing kind of what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Remove the, okay. So then Yahweh said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a standard, or that's like a sign. It's almost like a holding a stop sign or something, right? Like
Yeah.
a standard, like a flagpole, right? A flag. So
Yeah.
there was this sign, this symbol. It was the bronze serpent, and it will be that everyone who is bitten and looks at it will live. So it sounds like the serpents are still there, the snakes are still there, they're still going to get bit. But if you do get bit, you look at it, and the person will not die. And let's just read the last sentence here. And Moses made a bronze serpent. Now, these word bronze and serpent are kind of similar in Hebrew,
Hmm.
and set it on the standard. And it happened that if a serpent bit any man, when he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. That's it. That's the whole story right here. Six
Okay.
verses
But
or four
this little,
verses.
this story is so relevant to what happened in 2020, which I
Really?
devoted a whole chapter just on this.
Oh, really? You wrote about this in your book?
Yeah.
Wow. I made a video about a year and a half ago, and I put it up on my channel yesterday just because I remembered it, and I thought, oh, I'll put it up there now. It was
So
only like 10 minutes long, so it didn't
uh,
cover everything.
I'm
What
gonna talk
what did you
around it,
discover?
explain it.
What's your take on this?
Well, this kind of typology got repeated again, but it got so the scientists who had that technology of the genetic, you know what, right? Do we all know what that is, or do I got to say it?
Yeah, yeah, we know.
Okay, so they did it by snake venom. They
Yeah.
used it to when it goes into your cell instead of your own body, like it tricked your body to accept it because that mRNA technology, it lasts longer. Because normally, once your body creates that naturally, it gets used up and it's done. It doesn't store it for 20,000 years. But what they came up with is that it could last longer and more harsh environments. And then once it's in the system, it could potentially, so that they used it by the venom. And Dr.
So
Artist,
there actually is snake venom in the pharmakia. Is that what you're saying?
yes, and
There
it's all
is.
over the place, yes.
Well, snake
And
venom is pretty interesting if you think about it. It's like a natural, it is like it's a poison, but I think it can also be used in medicine.
it
Or do
does for
people
pain.
use it in medicine? Yeah.
Yeah, like
But it could
horse
be
racing.
poisonous as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more to it, which I can't really talk about here. But it is used in medicine. But now they were reproducing those organelles that create the venom. They can do it now through technology. Now, it doesn't, if you use it wrong, you're essentially poisoning through the venom. But if you use it correctly, it acts as a sedative, it acts as a painkiller, whatever. Because the way the venom works, it destabilizes, like let's say it's a rat, right? What does it do? It paralyzes the rat, it stops the heart, and then slowly it gets disoriented. So then the snake can just go ahead and do its thing. Um, what is that?
So what does that mean? This is the first WHO guidance on snakebite treatments published in 2023.
Yeah.
Anyway, but here's the thing. We're going to see this, the
Oh, the
Nehushtan,
symbol. Yeah.
the symbol, which we're going to read about next.
Yeah.
They turn this bronze serpent into a pagan idol or some kind of thing
Yeah.
for divination and all that stuff.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Are you ready? Do you have more to say about the
I do, but I can't. I'm already worried about this video. So if it gets taken
Yeah.
down,
All right. So, well, you can add more later if you want. So here, oh, let me go back to the Bible here.
I think I've already blown it.
No, 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 don't worry about it. Um, all right. So this is later on in 2 Kings 18 when the this is uh this is Hezekiah is like trying to reform because the Israelites at this point, this is much later, probably, whatever, hundreds of years later. The Israelites were basically had synchronized Canaanite religion and fertility cults with the temple of or the temple of Yahweh. They were offering in the high places, the temples, and all these things. So they were kind of a mixture of Yahweh and the Canaanite gods. They became polytheists, basically. Thanks to Solomon, kind of started that out, really.
Well, in most religions, snake is considered a deity.
Well,
Almost
yeah,
every other
in
religion,
Asia,
yeah, in
especially.
Asia, South America, all those non-Western countries, even like the Aztecs, they all of those symbolism. The Egyptians with their gods, remember, they always have that
Yeah.
serpent. in their.
Why, but in the Bible, isn't the serpent associated with Satan?
It is. That's
So how could
no.
they so why do they think the serpent is a good thing? Why is there a serpent on the pole over the flat earth map surrounded by let's look at this symbol again just real quick. Well, yeah, let's before I forget what I was about to say. Um this thing here, this is Ceres or Demeter.
Yeah.
This is another, another pagan god or goddess that that represents the fertility cult and the deity as well. And this is used by all the organizations that control this world, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Even
so
if you
you
don't
got
trust the.
this is the Nehushtan, which we're going to read about in a second here. This comes from the Bible, right? It comes
Yeah,
from
that's the book of
so it is
Numbers.
Moses. It was kind of a sign of healing to a certain extent that
Right.
Moses did, but then what we're going to read about now is what happened to it, and it's probably the way it's being used today.
Yeah.
Is so this is 2 Kings chapter 18. Hezekiah is one of the few. I think they only had like 4 good kings in Judah, 0 in Israel in the northern kingdom. Um, so he's getting rid of all this stuff. He took away the high places, like the temples that I live around. There's a lot of these where I live, and shattered the sacred pillars. This and cut down the Asherah, which is a wooden, it's a Christmas tree basically.
Yeah. Well, they were using that as worship with these Asherah poles.
Yeah, which is a tree. A pole is a tree that's been cut down,
Yeah.
right?
Which is the whole Christmas holiday based on
And
that.
and
Yeah.
when we put Christmas presents under the tree, we're making an offering to
To
the
the tree.
demon, to the
Yeah.
tree. Yeah, you give the presents to the tree first.
Right.
So if anyone wants to give a gift to somebody, just give it directly to them, bypass the demon.
There's a passage in Jeremiah that talks about that Christmas
I
tree.
know.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. Yes. I'll probably do a more in-depth video on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy how it's still around today, basically, right? Christmas, everyone,
Yeah. I mean,
all the non-Christians love Christmas,
right.
but Christians also are doing a pagan style of Christmas most of
Well,
the
that's the
time.
unfortunate part that even like some of the religions, they took the pagan rituals of the old days and just put Christ on it.
That's still
So,
happening today,
yeah.
and that's what we're reading about right here. Is what happened. So these are the Israelites, right? He took away the high places, shattered the sacred pillars, cut down the Asherah, and he broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made. So it was either the exact thing that Moses made or a replica. It sounds like it was the actual thing.
Yeah.
For until those days, the sons of Israel were burning incense. We talked about that last week
Yeah.
to it, and it was called the Nehushtan. Nehushtan.
They
I don't know
named
exactly.
the pole.
And this is kind of basically a mixture of bronze and serpent together in one word in
Yeah.
Hebrew. Yeah, this is the name of that. The Who logo is this basically.
Hmm.
Because so they had this thing, and they were instead of being just a kind of a sign to look at, and it's really a sign of faith and healing and belief and
Right.
and and, and mercy and forgiveness.
Yeah.
They were using this for divination and like a magic,
Right.
ritual, and maybe even part of the serpent cult, part of the fertility cults, because
Yeah.
we have Asherah in the high places mentioned, and they had the transvestites and the whole thing, and they were doing this this could have been in the temple actually. I don't think it says that here, but they put a lot of pagan idols in the temple, just like people today put a Christmas tree in a church, and they
Right.
even wear the reindeer horns, which are the goat god horns or the bull horns and all that stuff.
Well, they also celebrate Halloween too. So,
Yeah, they're very worldly. See, people don't realize how pagan our culture is.
It's super
It
pagan.
really
That's
is.
why.
We're living in Egypt or Babylon or the ancient Near
Right.
East, Canaanites. The culture is it's a culture of Canaanites.
Well, that's why God keeps saying deception, 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 right? It's like you have to
Like
come
I
out
said,
of deception.
someone just had a stroke during our church service last week in
Wow.
church, and he had to leave, go to the hospital. I've never seen a person have a stroke in my life, and it happened in a church, so he should not have been deceived, but yet he was. Apparently, I don't know the exact cause of the stroke
Well, it could
scientifically,
just
but
be
I could assume.
yeah. Well, either way, the church is supposed to be a protected place, right? For us to get to worship together as a body, but also rejuvenate because
That's a good point.
we
Oh, go
always go
ahead.
out in the world.
Pastors need to protect their flock. What does a shepherd do? A shepherd protects the flock from the wolves. But
Yeah.
now the wolves have come in the door. The wolves are in the church.
Yeah. And I mean,
So
also the prayer, like imagine if all the believers are in that one place gathering and they're worshiping and praying, especially if they're praying for one another. Is it having any effect? Because you're intermingling darkness with, so like it's supposed to protect the people, just like when they were inside the camp. They were being protected, not just being sanctified, but they were being protected from the outside world where all the sin and death lived. As long as they had faith in God, they were fine. Nothing was going to touch them. Their shoes weren't going to wear out. Clothes weren't going to wear out. They weren't going to die. The only reason they're dying is because they're rebelling, right?
yeah.
So if today all we have is the Holy Spirit and the Word of God. And if we congregate together, it should be like the living water. Like it should be like, whoa, everybody's like super everything. But it's not. Why do they have problems still? Why do we have problems still? We shouldn't if we gather in those places.
Well, yeah, but we're still not in the, just like these guys, we're still not in the promised land. But okay, now they're going to mention this thing again, though, in John chapter 3. And just to
Mhm.
get the context, Jesus is talking to the ruler of the Jews, a Pharisee, a high level Pharisee, it sounds like Nicodemus,
Hmm.
maybe the leader of the Pharisees, and is trying to explain what's going on, right? They're
Yeah.
born again, and this guy doesn't understand, and obviously, and there's water again, right? Water, that kind of stuff, born again, and finally, okay, this is a good one. If I told you earthly things and you do not believe, how will you believe if I tell you heavenly things? And no one has ascended into heaven, but he who descended from heaven, the Son of Man. Okay, so there's this ascension language. And Moses lifted up the serpent sorry, and as Moses lifted up the serpent, this is Jesus talking in the
Yeah.
wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, which is, I guess that could be the cross, but also this ascension into heaven after the cross, right?
Yeah. He's
I
talking about
guess.
himself, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like he's the sign, just like Jonah, right? The sign. What's the
Yeah.
sign? There is this. He's kind of asking for a sign. What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, because Nicodemus would know about this episode
And
here.
even that rod to lift up the serpent, that was a miracle. So that's what all those people that were healing from it, those were actual miracles. And it was,
Yeah, they were
again, talking
repenting and,
about,
and
yeah,
believing.
right.
So repentance and belief, just like right here, it basically explains it right here. So that whoever believes, right? So if you believed, you would be healed. Back in Numbers, they were healed.
Yeah,
But whoever believes in Jesus will in him have eternal life.
yeah,
So not just physical healing, like in the Numbers, they were bit by the snake, poisonous snake, and then they were healed. They didn't die, but they did not have eternal life, right?
yeah.
They didn't die from the snake bite, but they eventually died of old age or something. But here, whoever believes in him will have eternal life. Hold on.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, forgot to turn down my AC.
Oh, it's funny that you say
Getting
that
noisy.
'cause I'll get pretty cool too.
All
Uh,
right. Let's see here. Eternal life. Yeah. But and then, what's interesting is that this is the famous John 3:16 verse that everyone knows.
yeah,
But this Nehushtan thing, or this, well, no, this is really not talking about the idol. This is talking about the original one from Moses.
yeah,
But this is mentioned like right before that,
yeah,
so it's pretty
because
interesting.
it was kind of like a symbolic way of like through faith you are healed, but when you're healed, it's actually God doing that. So they did get, uh, instead of dying, they got eternal life for that little second anyway.
Yeah. So it made a bronze serpent and it's not this sign of the serpent doesn't really heal the people. It's God healing the
Ah,
people.
yeah, right.
And they just kind of looked at it. They repented and they looked at it and they believed and they received healing.
Well, that was the
Yeah.
faith part, right? So when they looked at it, they had faith enough that they were going to be healed because it's
And I
just
think
a
here,
statue,
yeah.
right? It's nothing but a rod.
Yeah. Yeah, and then in the Book of Kings, they were using this as some kind of magic, just like they always do, right? They get something that God gives them, they will turn it into an idol and try to use it
Yeah,
to manipulate it for health and wealth and prosperity and
yep.
all these things, just like they do today. So I
They
think
do a
he's what
lot.
he's doing here, Jesus is talking to this Pharisee and telling him about a story he would have known about. And he's
Yeah,
like, yeah, just like Moses did this thing, that's what I'm doing. But
right.
I'm offering eternal life,
Yeah.
you know. And it's interesting there, the serpent. So in a way, yeah, we've all been kind of affected by the serpent in our lives somehow through sin or whatever, deception.
Well, it's
But if we
also
believe in
interesting
God,
that he used Satan as a symbol. The serpent represents Satan. So when it's dead around the staff like that, it's also saying that he conquered.
I think so, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And also the serpent was associated with Egypt and yeah, Satan and
Well, the original serpent
Canaanites.
in the garden.
Yeah, which I don't know if these Israelites even really knew about that so much. Maybe they did,
No, they
but
wouldn't. But we know it. We know it from how
yeah,
the
yeah,
typology is continuing, right?
yeah. I think that's a good point. That yeah, it represents the defeated serpent has
Yeah.
been defeated, and it's
So
yeah.
it's
So they're not looking at so really that world the who symbol. They shouldn't be using that really.
Hey, if they knew what it meant, because what it means that the Satan's defeated. That's what it means.
They're using it in the two kings version, aren't
Yeah.
they? Right
Which is
here.
so
It's
interesting.
this. They're using this.
Yes.
They're using
But they
this.
don't even realize that God still has a hand over that too. The symbol that they're
Yeah.
using.
It's
Because,
a defeated symbol. That's a good point that the
yeah,
who has really been defeated,
exactly. And
but
that's
people don't know it.
because what does who want? They want worldwide domination for the medical stuff, right? They want to, but it's not just medical. They use that to control all other aspect of every governmental act. They usurped every constitution, even now, like when they
Yeah.
take down my videos, guess who they cite? They cite the
Who?
WHO as the authority. So now that I see that symbol on them, which is, I know in their mind they're thinking something else, but when we should look at it spiritually, what I see now is that they're really, God is kind of mocking them, saying, you're just putting up a symbol of defeated Satan on your own earthly empire, which is great. So we should go with that. So that's God
This
mocking
this
the
thing
world,
here. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because why did God you just explained it in that Christ was using that as a symbol, as a miracle that was done, that he defeated Satan and death. That's how they get to live. Because you don't get to live if you are still in the world, and especially if you turned your heart towards, Satan and his doings, because that's the serpent is represented by Satan. And if they kept with the world, they would have died with the serpent because God will eventually will deal with the serpent. So this was a symbol. I think this was God's symbol saying, I conquered, you shall live.
Is
And
this a syringe?
no, that's a staff. But
Oh, this is the
yeah,
staff. Well, that's the thing, though. It could have a double meaning.
well, it
Um,
does have a double meaning because I know what the scientists did to create their crap. So,
and
and they use,
venom,
because,
snake venom in the syringe.
yeah. And the thing is, they're using serpent everything. Okay, like to them, serpent is their God. But to God, he's saying, no, I put a stake down. It's done. And that's what Jesus is saying. You shall have eternal life by faith. And,
Yeah, yeah. So I think the John chapter 3 passage kind of shows the fulfillment of all this stuff, and then the 2 Kings passage shows us the what's the word? The idolatry aspect, the kind of the mistaken use of this
but what's so
um
more interesting
this
in this story too, the stuff about Jesus doesn't even happen yet. This is all pre-Jesus. So he's setting up little breadcrumbs everywhere. He's saying he defeated,
yeah.
right? Because it's through Christ's death that got defeated sin and death. But here he's leaving breadcrumbs saying, faith, you can live if you have faith, which is the same thing that will happen later in the New Testament.
Yeah, and here's kind of the real promised land as well, right? Is
Yeah.
eternal life, the
So
kingdom of
these are
God.
parallel stories.
So they're talking about the kingdom of God here. They
Yeah.
see Jesus is trying to explain to this high level Pharisee the kingdom of God,
Yep.
and he doesn't get it, even though he has the scriptures. Jesus is using the Old Testament to describe himself and the kingdom of God and what you know.
You know,
He's using the Old Testament.
it's interesting that you need the Old Testament to understand the New Testament, but you also need the New Testament to understand the Old Testament.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you can't separate
Exactly.
those two.
You do, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we keep going here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is pretty, it's kind of a deep and mysterious passage in a way, and you have all those different references to it. That's
Yeah,
pretty
it's a
interesting.
pretty awesome passage.
That's why I made a video on it like a year and a half ago, and I just put it up on YouTube yesterday. I don't know if it'll survive the
Yeah, YouTube is,
we'll see, because I did say a few things you're not supposed to say in that, but because I made it a long time ago.
we almost need
Um,
another channel just to talk that out of our
I
system.
kind of have that. I mean, I do kind of have. I mean, I have alternative platforms that I use.
Yeah, I don't,
Um,
because
YouTube is just for the ones that if I make a video that is, YouTube friendly, then I'll put it on YouTube.
the
But
only thing is sometimes the biblical stuff comes up where it's relevant to what's actually happening.
yeah, I
So it's
think basic Bible study. Yeah, I think if you just, use words like pharmakia or whatever, pestilence,
yeah, but what I want
plague.
to talk about, I can't really because it goes in the depth of the technology that how they did it, which I wrote about it, but uh it's like most people still don't know and understand. Like I mean, anyway, let's move on.
Problem is too, like when you try, like most of the people I know um, have taken the pharmakia, and if you're kind of going to explain to them how dangerous it is, they get a little bit nervous because it's in
Well,
their
they
body.
should be because once, well, think about it. It's a lot to think about a pressure on people to follow the plan in the government versus uh, user thinking in their spirit that may be telling them this, it's not good. So when they have to decide and then get banned from society, it's really, really hard for anybody, even for us. Like you got to make that choice. Even now, we're using their platforms, but we have to be censored. Is that
Yeah,
that's just wrong?
there's yeah, I mean I mean one of my neighbors actually he gets the pharmakia every 6 months.
Yeah, well, his body must be special because I'm pretty
No,
sure.
no, he's the doctor's giving him like a year to live.
Oh, yeah. Because
which
they
is kind
don't,
of a, so he thinks he needs more, right? It's like, oh, I'm dying, so I better get more pharmakia. It's
because
just a
they're not
different
looking
different
to
worldview.
God.
Yeah,
Well, imagine that
that's their
story
God.
about, well, the rod and the serpent,
It's
all they have to
this.
do is look at it in faith.
This is their God. The pharmakia is their God. The who is
Yeah,
their
but
God. The Nehushtan is their God. The Asherah is their God. We're coming into major Asherah worship season right now, right?
yeah.
So, I mean, this is relevant. This is society right here. Right here, this is the world we live in today, right now.
Yeah, these themes are coming up over and over and over. It's just that people don't have any connection to it to actually see it because the real world is just about earning and buying and selling, right? That's
And
all.
Hezekiah cleaned up basically Hezekiah got rid of all this stuff. So that's what Jesus will do when he returns, is get rid of all this
So imagine a
idolatry.
spiritual leader today saying, get rid of all this stuff. Don't do
Well,
this. Don't do
ultimately it's in
that.
the people's heart. See, ultimately
Right.
the root of all the problems are in the people's hearts,
Yeah. So
and only
only through
God can do
Christ
that.
now because there's
Yeah.
no prophet that can tell them anything. That's been done away with just because there's only one now.
The road is wide that leads to destruction,
Yeah.
and many will find it. Only the path is narrow, and only few will find the path to eternal life.
Yep.
So, you know.
Did we finish 21?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Let's keep
We
going.
got some more battles.
All
You
right.
ready? This is going
Yeah.
on. These are always so long. I think it kind of intimidates people. Like, do I want to click on a 3 hour video? No, probably not.
No, but maybe some have time to listen to this stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you can watch it in installments or whatever,
Yeah.
or watch part of it or don't watch it. It's up to you, whatever. I don't care
I
if you
think it's
watch it.
almost better listened to. Like if, like let's say they got a job truck driving or something and they
Audio,
go
yeah,
10
yeah,
hours.
that's a good place in the
Yeah.
car, instead of, because I used to listen to like rock music when I drove, just
Yeah.
because it kind of keeps you awake a little bit. But then
Right.
I find these days I'm like, well, I don't really, if I have to drive for an hour, I want to use that time
Right.
productively. So I'll listen to a
Yeah.
podcast or something.
Yeah, I
All
know
right.
that some people who watch my channel, they like the longer podcasts. They're like, "Oh, yay.
Yeah, I think at
Now I
some
can
point
read."
people want, you know, people don't have an attention span these days anymore, but I think it'll come back, who knows?
Yeah, if they
Um,
want the truth, if you just want snippets of all the,
yeah.
verses, like
Well,
I see them on the walls, like all the stuff that they do. That's not going to teach you anything. You got to learn it.
yeah, we're getting into the context here, I think,
Yeah.
fairly well. And none of us have all the answers, but we're trying to figure it out at
No, you
least.
did a pretty good job in figuring out all these
All right.
connections. All right.
Yeah, all right. So let's keep going here. Then the sons of Israel set out and camped in Obot. They don't really have the th sound in Hebrew, by the way, but so I don't know
Yeah.
why they do that. But Obot, do you see that on the map? It's kind of small.
No.
Anyway, it's somewhere there. Then set out from Obot and camped at
Your river,
Barim in the wilderness, which is opposite Moab,
east
east towards
toward.
the sunrise. Interesting way to put that.
So let's
The
look at opposite of it.
opposite
Oh,
Moab.
Moab.
So they're up here, I guess now. Yeah, because
But
they're going to encounter Og of Bashan. Here's Bashan should be on there. Do you see Bashan? I thought Bashan was on there. It's on
Heshbon.
there somewhere.
But what
Where's
is
this
opposite of
King Og?
Moab?
Anyway, for a while we're going to be camped out around here in our story now. It sounds like they're up here now.
But how is that opposite of Moab? Where the sun?
Well, they're here right now. They're here, but they're here
Oh,
right now. They're here, and then they're heading here. We're gonna have a lot of stuff happening here over the next today and next week as well.
all right.
Um, and maybe they go all the way. Oh, there's Ashtaroth way up there. Oh, there's Bashan is way up there.
Oh,
See, we're gonna head here in a minute. So that they're right here and they're going up here.
okay.
Bashan. And these are the giants. the descendants of the giants are up here
Yeah.
as well. They're kind of all over the place.
And
All right.
you notice like there that's next to Sea of Galilee where Jesus stories begin in the New Testament.
Isn't
So
where's
they
Nazareth?
must
Isn't that
be
up there?
conquering this in the Old Testament and then preparing the land for the New Testament.
Maybe. Yeah. Have you ever been there, by the way, to
No, I
Israel?
wish.
I
I
haven't
really want
either.
to go there when they're
Yeah,
fighting people.
maybe. Well, a lot of it's just news stories,
Yeah,
But anyway, all right. So then the sons of Israel set out there
I
and
kind of want to
well, the
live there.
opposite. Yeah, yeah, it'd be a good place to study Hebrew. All right.
Yeah.
From there, they set out and camped in Wadi Zered. From there, they set out and camped on the other side of Arnon, which is in the wilderness that comes out of the border of the Amorites. Now, weren't these guys? Well, okay, now I remember now. The Amorites and these people in Moab, these are the descendants of Lot and his daughters. Remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Yeah, that's who these guys are.
but they're
So
wicked.
there's Ammon. Well, yeah, they are. They are Moab and Ammon come from Lot and his two
Well,
daughters when they
Moab
raped him.
is the book, by the time you get to the book of Ruth, they said that Moab was a wicked place. Prosperous.
Where is Ruth? Where does that take place? Do you
Well,
know?
she's a Moabite, so she
She
came
is.
from
So it starts
Moab.
out here.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, that
Well, I
makes
mean,
sense.
it starts out from Israel, but they moved to Moab
Ah,
because famine was in Israel at the time.
okay, okay. Here's Ammon.
Yeah.
Here's Moab. So they're basically heading up here, and then they're in the Ammonites, and then they're going to go up there. The border of Moab. Okay. Therefore, it is said in the book of the wars of Yahweh. Now, see, we don't have this book. There's about 10 books mentioned in the Bible that do not exist today. Or if they do, they're kept secret somewhere. They probably do exist, to be honest. Like somebody has them, maybe.
Well, God has
And
to
we've
preserve
never
them
seen.
somewhere. Yeah. But
There's
that
a
would
lot of
be
these
so
books.
interesting to read those, though.
Oh yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great. You
Book
got to
of
watch out for
Wars?
forgeries though. There's a couple of these prophets mentioned in the Old Testament, and I have seen books like the Book of Gad or whatever, Edo. It's like I don't think they're legit. I don't know. I don't know if they're legit. But sometimes you see a book pop out of nowhere and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we found it." Well, is it legit or not? You got to be careful.
Right.
Anyway,
But the fact that he even wrote that, Book of Wars of Yahweh.
that would be a cool book to read, huh? We'd get a
Yeah.
lot more information about the giants as well, probably. Um,
Well, how he's
but
thinking like a warrior then, like a warrior god,
but
right?
you know what this is though? I think these verses here after this are probably quotes from this book. It sounds like
Yeah.
it's or even like a poem or a song or something. So therefore it is said. So they're really actually quoting this book. So we have a bit of it right here, it sounds like.
Yeah.
It is said in this book, Book of the Wars of Yahweh, Wahev in Supah, and the Wadis of the Arnon, and the slope of the Wadis that extends to the site of Ar and leans to the border of Moab. And okay, so that doesn't really help us.
Well, no, it's establishing the region,
Yeah.
which he's
So,
conquering right now, right? So he's setting up this entire region because if we don't learn this now, the New Testament might not make sense of how it all transpires because Jesus comes on the scene and he's talking to them and Sea of Galilee, all the Sermon on the Mount,
yeah,
all the stuff that he does. So this map is actually really helpful to kind of figure out what's happening.
yeah. And
So,
then, yeah, okay, yeah.
so
All
he
right.
mentioned
So,
the site at where is that?
R,
Um,
I don't know. I didn't see it there. It's too small.
all right.
Um,
Okay, so but
anyway,
he
well,
does
let's just keep
mention
reading.
Moab though, border of Moab.
And from there they continue to Be'er. That is the well where Yahweh said to Moses, "Assemble the people that I may give them water." Okay. Then Israel sang this song. Okay, remember after the Exodus, the first generation sang a song after
Yeah,
the Exodus.
Miriam song.
And then this is another song. Spring up, oh well, sing to it. And it's about water. The
Yeah.
well which the leaders dug, which the nobles of the people carved out with the scepter and with their staffs. And from the wilderness they continued to Matana, and from Matana to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamot, and from Bamot to the valley that is in the land of Moab, at the top of Pisgah, which overlooks the wasteland.
So,
Pisgah, I think, didn't I see that? They might be right down here somewhere, but pretty soon they're going to be up there.
and the other
Anyway,
thing to note that at least in modern Israel, they created a lot of technology to turn the desert land into a lush, fertile land.
hmm,
And throughout in Numbers time frame, a lot of the area that they were in was like a desert. And the fact that God was even providing them with water out of the rock,
yeah,
wells and
yeah,
stuff, those were
yeah.
miracles because they weren't supposed to be there.
Oh yeah. Well, they had the manna and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And there's only like 1 million people living in Jerusalem now, actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard. Even now, there's not a lot of people in the area. I think six
Yeah, and
million in the whole country of Israel.
but they're fighting like crazy, so.
Yeah. All right. So, okay, now here's Og the giant, the Rephaim. And they say he's the last remnant, the last Rephaim, but
Mhm.
yet the giants do continue after him as well. So it's a little confusing. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, let me pass through your land. We will not turn off into the field or vineyard. We will not drink water from the wells. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed through your border. Okay. So this is a big deal. This guy is, they refer to him a lot, him and Og of Bashan. These two guys here
Uh,
are like, they were like very powerful and they had big kingdoms and whatnot. So they celebrated this victory. They're going to achieve victory over them and they would celebrate it they're mentioned many, many times in the Bible, actually,
mhm.
after this. Okay. So, but Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his border. So Sihon gathered all his people and went out to meet Israel in the wilderness and came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. Let's just see King Sihon attacks. It's right here. Here they are, right?
Mhm.
The blue arrow. It's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, King Sihon attacks the Israelites. Then Israel struck him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok as far as the sons of Ammon. For the border of the sons of Ammon was Jezer. There's no, I don't know. There's Jezer. Here's the Ammonites right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're taking kind of this land right here. It sounds like, right? And Israel took all these cities, and Israel lived in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon and in all her towns, and they continued to live there. For some of them did. A couple tribes remained there even after they entered the promised land. Um, all right, so for Heshbon was the city of Sihon, king of the Amorites. Now it was he who had fought against the former king of Moab and had taken all his land out of his hand as far as the Arnon. Therefore, those who use Proverbs say, come to Heshbon, let it be built, so let the city of Sihon be established. For a fire went forth from Heshbon, a flame from the town of Sihon. It devoured the Ar of Moab, the dominant heights of the Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You perish, O people of Chemosh. That's their deity. That's the god of the Moabites.
Uh,
That's mentioned a few other times. He has given his sons as fugitives and his daughters into captivity. to an Amorite king, Sihon. But we have cast them down. Heshbon perishes as far as Dibon, and we have made desolate even to Nopah, which reaches to Medeba. Thus Israel lived in the land of the Amorites. And Moses sent to spy out Jazer, and they captured its towns and possessed the Amorites who were there. Then they turned and went up by the way of Bashan. Okay, so now they conquered this area, and
Mhm.
now they're going up here to Bashan, but they're
You know
still they're
what's
still not in the
interesting?
promised land.
Moab was also conquered already, but guess who's the line of Jesus came through? Came through Moab, Moabite woman, and
Hmm.
Boaz. So I wonder how, if it was conquered now, then how did it become back later?
I think that was talking about before,
Oh,
or because Moab is still there. Like right now in numbers, Moab is a country.
yeah. Okay. As
So
long as it's still
I
there.
think they got part of their land or something. Yeah. Um, all right. Then they turned and went up by the way of Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, went out to meet them, he and all his people, for battle at Edrei. But Yahweh said to Moses, "Do not fear him." Now, this guy is a giant, by the way,
Yeah.
one of the tallest ones. For I have given him into your hand and all his people and his land, and you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon. So they struck down him and his sons and all his people, until there was no survivor remaining for him, and they possessed his land.
So they
Okay.
wiped out the Amorites?
Yeah, sounds like it. And they would have been up here.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well,
there's later, I mean, I guess we'll come across other verses about they do continue to mention this guy, Og, and it's he's dead now. They just killed him, but
yeah.
they keep talking about him though, like in the rest of the Bible
In what
now
way?
and then. Let me see if I can find a verse here. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, there's one. Let's see here. Here's one. Because basically what happens is in Deuteronomy, um, in Deuteronomy, they kind of repeat the whole thing. Moses kind of tells them the whole story again. We turned and went up to Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, with all his people, came out to meet us. So it's the same story basically.
So we get more
Um,
details of what happened when he actually went to destroy it.
yeah, but then let's see. Here's one. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the Rephaim.
Which we called it before the Nephilims.
Well, they're descendants of the Nephilim, but I think they may have been kings because, okay, so remember what this says. Basically, it sounds like Og is the last Rephaim, right?
Yeah.
That's what it says here. But then um,
And
I
then
have
Gibson was
another,
one of the giants too, 9 foot.
and um, let's see, where's that verse? Okay, hold on here. Uh, then King of the Amorites, Anakim. Here, although it doesn't use the word Rephaim, but there were no Anakim. Remember, the Anakim were the giants as well. These were called the descendants of the Nephilim,
Yeah.
left in the land of the sons of Israel. And this is later on in Joshua, after they've entered the land now and have been
Yeah.
victorious. Only in Gaza. See, there's no Anakim left in the land of Israel now, but in Gaza and in Gat and in Ashdod, some remained. See, some
They
giants
didn't, yeah,
remained,
they didn't all die.
but they're so that could mean they're not Rephaim, but they are still giants somehow because Goliath was from here actually. Goliath and his brothers, he had giant brothers as well. So,
Yeah, but
it's a little
they're,
confusing as, you
well,
know,
aren't they still the descendants of the Nephilims, which is the angel and human
yeah.
hybrid?
Yeah, it's just this word Rephaim could be a more specific term in the Anak. I mean, I don't know. They're all giants
Or
somehow, but some are called Rephaim and some are called different names. They're called different names, actually. That's a big part of it.
maybe they're
It
just
could,
like
it,
sub tribes
it
of
could,
the,
yeah, sub-tribe, a tribe of a certain tribe.
yeah.
And then there's other tribes of giants, and there's the Rephaim tribe, and then the word Rephaim is used like in the wisdom literature and in the Psalms, and they're dead at that point. So they're the spirits of the Nephilim in Sheol or in the abyss somewhere in Sheol are called Rephaim as well. But anyway, so this verse shows right here that Og was not the last giant. He may have been the last Rephaim, but he was not the last giant.
Uh,
So this
last
is later.
Rephaim.
Yeah.
I mean, if the giants existed at all out of the hybrid situation, then those are the descendants of the Nephilim. Their DNA still keeps
Well,
going.
maybe. Well, we
So,
saw that in yeah, I mean this that's why this numbers oh,
so they
hold
weren't
on.
all wiped out in the flood, right? Because how did they prop up again?
Well, I mean we don't know, but I mean
And are they still
there's some
around
theory
now, or did they all die?
because Ham, the descendants of like one of the main theories is that one of like the wife of Ham, Noah's kind of rebellious son, his wife could have been had Nephilim blood or something. So the
But
bloodline could have survived. But that, I mean, I don't know that it's not a fact. It's a theory. You know what I mean?
except
Um,
God said all those 8 people were deemed
no,
pure.
no, no. Just only Noah. Only Noah was righteous.
Uh,
Yeah, only Noah. But his family was kind of a went along for
but
the
why
ride.
would he allow them to survive if the whole purpose was to kill them
The
all?
whole no, no, no. The purpose was not to kill off everyone or not to kill off the Nephilim necessarily. That wasn't the purpose. Purpose was judgment.
Well, it
Notice a
was
lot of these
purpose.
a lot of these judgments we see are not complete judgments, right? He could have killed every single human being on earth, but he saved Noah and his family. That's the mercy. That's the judgment and the mercy.
But the other thing was the Nephilims were superhuman, were they not? Not just big people. They had,
Well, here it says right here the sons of whoever wrote this, right? So the spies didn't say this stuff in the parentheses. The spies did not say this part here.
yeah.
And the spies, I believe, were intentionally trying to scare the people because they didn't want to go. They wanted to go back to Egypt. So they kind of emphasized the danger. Oh, we saw the Nephilim, and they said we saw the actual Nephilim. But then the writer of Hebrews clarified it and said, well, the sons of Anak are part of, or usually it would say they're descendants of the Nephilim.
But even that part I don't even care about. It because they were saying they saw the Nephilim and then they said they were like grasshoppers in their own sight, which later on
But this is
it
rhetoric.
does.
They're exaggerating.
No, I understand, but it does define some of those other kings that were like 9 foot tall or crazy,
Yeah, yeah,
whatever.
there's definitely giants in the Old Testament, right?
Yeah,
But it says here, so the Bible itself does say they're descendants of the Nephilim, and the
yeah,
Nephilim started before the flood. So it
right.
is
So
interesting. Now they could have created new Nephilim after the flood, like in Sodom and Gomorrah. If you think about it, Sodom and Gomorrah were
yeah,
also
that's
met with very severe punishment.
because it
That
was
was not that didn't happen again and anywhere else like that
right.
exactly.
Because they
So
were going after strange flesh.
in the
So
strange flesh in the book of Jude, it actually doesn't mean homosexuality. Actually, if
this
you read it carefully,
angel, yeah,
hetero flesh, which means other flesh, which would not like if a man goes after a woman,
that's
that's
not
other,
strange.
right?
Yeah.
That's not homosexual. So That's other flesh because it's a man and a woman. They're different. So, but the book of Jude says, yeah, they went after strange flesh, which
Angel, human.
seems to mean it would either mean women or non-humans.
Oh, I think it's non-human
See, the
because
angels, the Sodomites were, yeah, they were practicing homosexuality and I believe transvesticism, but they
that
wanted
wasn't
to have
even the
sex
scariest.
with those men they wanted to have sex with were actually
Angels.
angels. And
Yeah,
they
and
probably
then
knew it. They probably knew it. They probably knew it. They
yeah,
probably knew.
because
I
I
think they
think
knew it.
they already experienced the fact that if they hybrid, they were going to gain power, knowledge, whatever. So why not? Because the thing is that even after they were struck with blindness, they still pushed their way through to get to them. They didn't care.
Strange flesh.
Yeah. We
Other
should read the part
hetero. It's
where
heterosarx. Yeah.
we should read the part where they got blinded. Where what does it say? The same way.
Well, this is Jude.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, in the Genesis version of it, uh, it was so severe. So God took out the children. Everybody was there. Even like Lot's wife, she couldn't look back, and if she did, you know what happened to her. But I think it wasn't just about like homosexuality. I really think it had a lot to do with how depraved they got that they were seeking after strange flesh, and even to the point where no matter what they did, even after they were blinding, they were pushing their way through to get to them because they really, really wanted that. I don't know how they thought they were going to get it, but I don't think it was about homosexuality at all at that point. We should find the verse where
Yeah,
they were
if you look at
blind.
this, right, the outcry, and they were like evil and really nasty
Yeah,
people. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and we're not given like all the details, but
right.
their sin is exceedingly grave,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like like as bad as they can get, basically, and they're destroyed by fire. Here, see, two angels came to Sodom,
yeah.
and then the men of Sodom wanted to have
Found it. Okay,
sex with
so
the
this is the
angels.
part.
They wanted to have sex with angels, basically.
Yeah,
That's
but
a fact.
it wasn't even the old, it was the young. So they surrounded the house from every quarter. So it's not about sex, it's about getting the powers that they wanted with them. And they
We may
said
know them. It was some kind of magic
something.
some, yeah, do something with angels to
Yeah.
get to gain power. Now they could have been creating, see, it almost is like they were used to it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, hey, look, we got some more angels in town. Let's create
Yeah.
more Nephilim.
I think so too. I think that's why God had to. So, like, the first judgment was pretty severe, and then the second one, he hasn't wiped out anything else, even though the same wickedness continues. But he wiped out Sodom and Gomorrah. Why? Because they were trying to do more hybrid stuff.
Yeah, but it's a judgment. It's not. See, I think God allows. There's a verse somewhere. I think it's in Deuteronomy that says, "There's a reason I leave these evil people here. It's to teach you guys how to fight and teach you warfare and to test you, something like that. Like, and there's a reason there's still even evil in the world today. There's a reason for it. Like
Yeah.
the point, the purpose of the flood was not to exterminate evil completely. It was a judgment, and then it really shows his mercy. The fact that he even saved eight
Lot.
people,
Yeah.
they didn't even Noah didn't really deserve to be saved.
But you
You know,
notice even in
he
this
had faith.
story, he saved Lot and his family, except for the wife. It was the same situation again. But I want to go down to the part where they were blinded. Uh,
Oh,
uh,
here it is, blindness. Right here, verse 11.
yeah, they struck the men who were at the doorway with the house of blindness from small to great. So they were wearied themselves trying to find the doorway. What? Like, don't you find that strange? Like, if you're blinded all of a sudden, like, you're not going to pursue what you think you want, right? You're like, oh my God, I'm blind. So, but these guys didn't even care about that. They
Oh,
still,
they still kept on going.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. They still that still didn't stop them.
All right. So
Um,
this is not about just homosexuality. This is way bigger story.
Yeah. The outcry has become great, right? So yeah, there's some crazy stuff. Like, because there was all kinds of weirdness going on already everywhere in that region.
Yep.
Homosexuality, transvesticism, whatever. They did everything they weren't supposed to do, but Sodom was even worse. They went one step beyond that, which could have been something with angels and some
Yeah. I think
supernatural
that's why it had to
weird.
be destroyed because it was both
Yeah.
young and old, everybody in town for miles.
They
And
could, why not destroy the whole region, right? Because they're all equally as bad. They were somehow worse,
yeah. Well, those
somehow
two
worse.
cities, the
Because
Sodom
they were
and
doing homosexuality everywhere, right?
right.
So why was Sodom special? Because of the
Angel.
angels. It's
Yeah.
just a fact that they were angels, right? So
Yep.
we don't know if they knew they were angels or not, but I think we can
Oh, I think they
assume they
knew.
did.
They
I think
did
they knew.
because he offered,
Why
hey,
wouldn't they
don't
know?
take my
I,
women daughters,
I mean, they looked like men. They looked like humans, but they probably would have known.
But
Um,
I think they probably looked a little angelic too. They probably didn't look just like men.
See,
So,
yeah, exactly, exactly. They would have known. See,
yeah,
right here, the angels. They're referred to as angels right here.
yeah,
The punishment of the city, right? But then you have
yeah.
compassion again. You always have this punishment and
And
compassion kind
compassion.
of very close to each other, right? So
Mhm.
there's someone's always saved from the judgment, you notice, and even in the end times is like that as well, right? There's a massive judgment that will come upon the entire world, kind of like Sodom and Gomorrah, and then some people are saved.
Well, that's the end time too. There's a
Well,
judgment
that's
on
what I'm
the
talking
wicked,
about.
and then many are saved. So
Yeah,
actually, the end time is more than like all this time. Only a few got saved, but the end time, many people got saved.
here's the here it says here's the Lot and his daughters.
Yeah,
There's the Ammonites right here, right?
right.
Moabites, right? We just read about this, and there's the Ammonites.
Which were all incestuous children there,
Yeah.
right?
The,
Because
the daughters of Lot raped their father.
yeah, and well, later on they also became the wicked cities. Uh, but
All
out of
right.
that is Ruth, who gave birth to Christ's lineage.
You just can't wait to talk about Ruth.
I know. Well, it comes up so much now that we're talking about Moabite. So, heck, I spent more
Anyway,
than a year and a half on this.
yeah. Yeah, you're the expert on Ruth. For some reason, I don't get that story too much, but you can
Well,
explain it
you
to me, maybe.
will, you will. Well, all
All
this
right.
stuff is important to get to that one. So history is really important.
So anyway, so that's where we end today
Perfect.
with
Yeah.
Og of Bashan getting killed. No survivor. And maybe next week, well, at some point we'll have to talk about this. Why did they devote them all to just like why did they have to kill the women and the children and the farm animals? And I mean, it's basically kind of an offering or a sacri. It's a they were commanded to do it that way, and they're like defilement. They're unclean.
Yeah.
They have to be
Well,
exterminated.
they
But
were
people
unclean.
really have a problem with this concept today. In today's world, it's really not politically correct. You know what I mean? So we have to explain that a little bit more
Well, God
because
always talks about the leaven and the unleavened. Like if you analyze, uh, the yeast that makes the leavened bread, if you say that yeast is sin, and I'm just using that as an example, but it's been used in the Bible too. That little bit of leaven corrupts the whole batch, right? If you have a little bit of sin, if you analyze it like yeast just spreads everywhere to make every part of the whole bread. You can't just isolate it. So you can't isolate sin. If you put a little bit in, it'll corrupt everything else to go with it. So I think that's why he always has to wipe out if he's trying to preserve a certain area without, the sins that if they worshiped other gods, if they did sacrifices they shouldn't have been doing, all of these things. If you let one survive, then that would corrupt the whole batch, which you can't do.
yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of a I mean, God's trying to establish. I mean, you couldn't even have defilement around the camp of the
Yeah,
tabernacle. So it's really
right.
the same rules apply to the Israelites. That's why
Yep.
they had the priesthood to cleanse them. If they were unclean, they would be destroyed. The
Yeah.
Israelites would be killed if they're unclean. And these guys here in Canaan, they're unclean and they're not repenting. They could have repented. Some of them do actually, but
Yeah, and
most
this
do
was
not.
all about trying to create a little kingdom on earth. But in reality now, after Christ, he lets the wheat and the tare stay together until the
Hmm.
harvest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there will be eventually the new creation will be clean. It'll be a clean place.
But it also tells us that God's kingdom, once we finally entered our promised land into God's kingdom, it will be clean. There will be not even a teensy bit of sin,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yep.
So,
And Og, by the way, this guy Og, his bed, or some people might think it's his grave or something, but his bed was 13 and a half feet long.
yeah, those are big people.
And there's a lot of things where they basically say he was a giant, you know what I mean? So he
Yeah,
was
which means a
one of the
Nephilim eventually.
probably over 10 feet tall, probably 12. Yeah, he could have been. He was taller than Goliath. See, maybe the Rephaim were even like taller than Goliath and those guys.
Yeah.
There's maybe different types of them, or
Well,
more
think
of a
about
pure
how much,
blood.
because it always talks about devouring much flesh every time they're talking about the Nephilims. And that would make total sense if there were different kind of people, that required a lot more. Um, anyway, I'm fading out. So,
All right.
good
All right.
place to
Well,
stop.
thanks a
Thank you
lot.
so much. This was really good today.
Another almost 3 hours again. So I
Yeah, we're
guess it's
doing
like
pretty
an
good
hour
on
per
this.
chapter. I mean, I
Yeah,
guess if a normal person would probably just do 1 hour episode of one chapter each, but we're doing three at a time, so it's 3 hours. Um,
yeah,
but it works because we can do it once a week and cover quite a bit of it. And
yep.
people have all weekend to watch it and think about it.
Or listen to it in your
Yeah.
car, at work, wherever. I mean, I actually look for a 3, 4 hour podcast so I don't have to keep finding videos,
Yeah, and I know I learned like by doing this podcast, I have to kind of dig deeper a bit, and
which
I
I'm glad you're
continually
doing.
learn a lot of stuff by doing that. If I just read it on my own, then I don't really need to know much about it. I
Yeah.
just kind of read it, and but
Well,
because
same
I'm kind of
here. I wouldn't have
I have
made
to
all
learn
those
about it.
connections. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. So now
it's,
next week is another uh very, very interesting story. Like the book of Numbers is just all these really strange and interesting things, right? And here
yeah.
again, we got Balaam, Balak and Balaam.
Aren't they like different gods now testing?
No, 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 no. This is the
No.
king. This is the king, and this is a
Oh,
like a Canaanite seer or a Canaanite prophet. He's not an
yeah.
Israelite, but there's all kinds of. This takes 3 chapters. By the way, this whole
Oh, good.
episode is exactly
Perfect.
3 chapters. And this is also very interesting stuff. So some people know what this is about, but
So
there,
the,
it,
the,
there's a lot of stuff that people don't know about regarding this story as well. So I
oh,
think
great.
next week will be a good episode also. So
3 hour, I'm sure, which I like the 3 hour.
yeah,
I don't know. It doesn't bother me because we cover
yeah,
a lot. 3 chapters, so many stories, people come and go. So it's like I can't wait another week just to find out what happened. So,
that's true. Yeah, especially the book of Numbers is almost arranged in segments of 3 chapters
yeah.
each.
And they're so
So
interesting, the stories.
but here they are making progress, and you know they're getting really close to entering the promised land,
Well, where is
which
the
doesn't right here over the Jordan, which doesn't happen until the book of Joshua. So the book of Deuteronomy is Moses giving speeches, basically, which comes up next. But right here in Numbers, now I think the rest in Numbers will be around this area, more or less around, somewhere around here. In fact,
Yeah.
it says Moses dies right there, which we were told about later on. But so they're still right about here somewhere, um, but they're getting close. So
She
we're in
didn't.
the, but the main point, we're in the second generation now. Like we have, because a lot of people think, because there's another in chapter 26, there's another census, and that's where everyone thinks that they think the second generation starts here.
Yeah,
That's what most people think, and that's what I used to think, because now they're counting the second generation, right?
yeah,
Chapter 26. But no, second generation starts chapter 20. And
right.
it doesn't really tell you that. You have to kind of figure it out.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
You figured it out. Good
A
job.
lot of scholars don't even know that, but some do. Some do. So it
Should write
wasn't
your book
really,
on it.
I learned it from someone else, from a book, actually.
You
Believe it
did?
or not. Believe it or not, I learned something from a book about the Bible. I guess you're not, that's bad, apparently, but
Well, no,
I find it
some
helpful
people are
sometimes.
useful. I don't have problems with studying more into every little part. Think about it. If people who weren't against the Bible but actually wanted to start filling in the blanks, I think that would be great. We don't know nothing
No,
about.
no, there's a lot of Christian scholars that are believers, actually.
Yeah, if they fill in the
There's
blanks, I think that's helpful.
See, the Christians have this, not you, but I'm just saying in general, there seems to be an aversion to using your brain because they think, well, there's no, we have faith. Therefore, we're not supposed to think. No, no, no. They can go together. They can go together.
They do
Don't
go
you
to,
think? Do you agree? I
yeah.
mean, we can
Well,
use our
yeah, I
brain
mean,
and have faith at the same time. But so many Christians, I find it frustrates me. They don't want to use their brain.
well, because I think they've been taught a certain way to just go faith alone. But honestly, like if you're trying to study something, we don't have all the answers, especially when it happened thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. So the people that are like obsessed about something, it's great if they go dig it out. My only problem is that those that dig it out oftentimes end up changing what the Bible actually.
Yeah, there's two types of scholars. There are those who are believers and who kind of, keep that in their scholarship. It's called doxological research. But then there are people who study the Bible who are not believers.
Yeah, and then they corrupt the thought process,
They
right?
do. Yeah. It really happened over the last couple of hundred years, big time. And some of them still get, but there is a big movement now in scholarship for believers, scholars
Which are great
who are
if they do their
believers.
job. You know, like just Genesis
Yeah.
alone. There's a lot of stuff that I learned from other people because they understood the science or something about it that I would not have known. But they were able to say, look, this formation of rock proves the flood happened. I'm like, okay, great. So they can explain that kind of stuff. So those are extra biblical things that somehow they got discernment, learning, taking the real world with the historical stuff, and they figured out the truth
Yeah.
and defend it.
There's no contradiction between science and the Bible. The
Yeah.
only problem is that we've been brainwashed with narratives and false cosmology and false idea. We have so many false ideas in our head from the people who lie to us.
Yeah, it's the
That's why we
lie.
think there's a contradiction. It's the Bible's true and accurate to a level that most Christians don't even believe the biblical cosmology because we've been brainwashed from the day we're born into it to not even know where we live.
Well, that, but I mean, there, so many people are perverting the truth because they can take something and then make it into something else. That's why, like, if you don't have the answers, just say you don't have the answers. We don't have to come up with stuff. I think the Bible is accurate 100%. And if I
It
don't
is.
know the answers, I'm going to rely on the word. I'm not going to make it up. But if there's a
Yeah.
way that people can explain it better because we don't understand everything, then I would have to think that God gives them wisdom enough to kind of discern it and then communicate it to our generation, right? Because we're so far removed from thousands of years ago, whatever actually happened. So we do need some visual, a lot of discernment and wisdom to be able to figure out what actually was happening, you know? And I think he does that through lots of people, you, me, and many others, to make sense of it. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, the average Christian is in churches. There's so much deception in the church And so they're the average Christian, I find they don't really know the Bible that well.
Well, that's the problem. That's the number one problem. That's why you're not going to get this kind of study inside of a church. When you go to a church, it's the same formula. They will invite you, they
Yeah.
will treat you like, hi, welcoming you spirit to kind of, and then the propaganda continues as soon as the sermon starts, right? You got to listen, and it lowers your mind level because you're wanting to be connected with God. You want to be
Mhm.
worshiping him. So you lower your senses, but they're telling you something. And the model just continues, like nothing actually happens. I never went to any church sermon where I said I understood what the Bible was or even knew what the Bible said. I have to do this on my own.
Yeah.
So, and I
Yep.
think there's only very small churches that might read it verse by verse. And even that, the pastor has to have a lot of knowledge and understanding to be even able to teach it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it is what it is. It's okay. I mean, everybody has different function. I think God can speak through whatever medium, some or all. And it's always about the heart. So even if we might know everything about everything all this says, it still doesn't mean that he still has to go after our heart. It's supposed to change us, right?
Yep. All right. Well, let's end it on that note.
All right. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thanks a lot. I'll see
You
you
did a
next week.
good job. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Have a good night. Bye.
Yep.